This is where the fun begins.
And I've always leaned towards if we're going to create something, we should check and see if it existed already to the fans, because it has way more value if we bring that in. And it's like, why would I just replace it with something new? So if we're going to do an admiral, if we're going to do a big military leader, yeah, I could create a new guy, sure. But what about Thrawn? Thrawn is great. Thrawn is a character we all know. Thrawn has a lot of credibility. So then you ask yourself, is it right to use him? And can we use him in a way that's similar to the books? Or are we using him and it's going to go completely into left field? And there have been times when we wanted to use things from the EU, and I was like, yeah, but we can't use it that way, so why? I don't want to use it and change it. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't want to use it and make it something completely different. That's rude.
Are you sure? So be it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel, OG Star Wars. This is your host, Alora Vaga. And yet again, another Talking EU. I miss these so much. I love to put people in the hot seat, with what I call the hot seat. Geez, act like I'm interrogating you. We have a Star Wars Marvel purist here today, and this is all his chance now, his time to really get into with me what brought him into Star Wars, what made him love it, what influenced him, who is his favorite character, all of that. And of course, people in the chat, if you do have a question, we'll try to get to it as well. So welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you doing, Marvel Purist?
I am doing great. Thank you very much for having me on. What is up? Hail chat. I see Soul Assassin in there, DJ, King Chris, Andrew, good to see you guys here, and anyone else that's stumbling in, CJ, Melissa Lord, a lot of the usual suspects. So Jordan France,
right, right on. Just automatically addressing the chat. That's what it is about here on my channel is getting everybody engaged, no matter what. Having people engaged with each other, talking Star Wars. So even though you're in this quote unquote hot seat, you know, we are going to hear from the chat and stuff as well. So yeah, and if you're catching the replay, let me know you came in, give us a hello, and also ask some questions or share your knowledge with us as well. So yes, and I see that, of course, we have Melissa Lord, channel member here as well. How are you doing? Jordan is in the house, just like you said you were reading, or you're doing your reading. Everybody's name in the chat, and then come on, I hate when it doesn't click or it takes its time to click and show. So go ahead and sub to Star Wars Marvel Purist. Here is his link, and you know, and give him some support, and his Twitter as well. Soul Assassin's awesome. He just is right on his shit all the damn time. You know, so, and let's see here. And then of course I'm getting teased because that's what, you know, we do here.
It was actually my fault. So
yeah, I kind of alluded to that a little bit. And then Dead Jedi's here. He's all here. I'm here to hurt people's feelings and have no remorse. And then so let's see here. Yeah, so everybody's dropping in. If I missed you, I'm so happy you are here with us. And also, all right. So
I'm ready for the hot seat.
Yes, the hot seat. So first of all, I've always asked this, even though it's not about the movies. Well, Star Wars, it's about Star Wars, but Talking EU for a reason, because we get into the more expanded lore, because the movies are the foundation. We know that. But the EU, the novels, the comics, everything that is built off of the foundation is what builds up the lore, the structure of the Star Wars universe. So what was your first movie that you watched?
So that is the craziest thing, like, because I'm
Uh-huh.
old. I was born in 80, so
I'm so
I
older than
obviously
you.
I obviously wasn't around when Star Wars came out and Empire. I was probably, an infant or, being delivered when Empire came out. But I remember Return of the Jedi. That's like the most nostalgic. But the thing is, like,
Uh-huh.
my cousin, his dad he had like all the cool shit, right? He had the big screen
Mhm.
TV. We remember watching the Dodgers in '88, the Kirk Gibson limp around the thing with the home run. Like, so he always had all like the cool shit. So he had, I don't know if it was VHS or like Laserdisc or whatever, but he had like all the Star Wars movies. I do remember, and that's how I know I was like super young, because I remember sitting for the Sunday night movie to watch the first Ewok movie and the second Ewok movie. We actually watched both of them, I believe, at my grandma's house. So
Wow. Okay.
like, I remember that, and like the Gorax, and for everybody expected a Rancor and all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
So, but yeah, I'd say, like, I don't know if it's the green lightsaber that stuck out, or I know obviously the Jabba's barge scene and just everything. I mean, I love Return of the Jedi, but that's like the most nostalgic for me, because I think that's the movie I remember like first and foremost. And I know Empire, if we're going on technicalities of creation of movies, Empire, you'd probably call it the best. But I would say Return of the Jedi is like the most nostalgic to me. And, and Revenge of the Sith holds a lot of value to me because that's the one that I've seen with my two daughters the most. So,
wow. Okay. Well, see, I say what my number one is Return of the Jedi. So I am not in that normal group, I guess you could say, if there's such thing as a normal group. But you know how the most popular usually is Empire Strike Back. Mine is the Return of the Jedi. So
yeah, and mine goes that way too. And I like to troll, fans that, cry about the Ewoks and shit like that. I think people know if anyone's checked my channel out, I tend to do lots of thumbnails with Ewoks, or like to trigger people that don't like Ewoks, and it's all fun and games and shit. But
yeah.
like, I mean, honestly, if you look at Wookiees, they're imprisoned all the fucking time. You play KOTOR, they're enslaved. They fucking are, to Zerka Corporation, and then after Attack of the Clones, and just the Wookiees are always like Transdoshans are always fucking putting them to slavery. So I mean, just because they're big and all that, like Wookiees like aren't like the biggest badasses that people think. I mean, they obviously are, but I think the Ewoks did pretty good, and I think it adds to the gravity of the story, and the sticking up for the little guy thing, that the theme that George was looking at for that part of the movie.
Exactly. And yeah, I think Ewoks do get like unwarranted hate. I guess you could sound like we're like talking about Jar Jar or something like that. It's unwarranted hate. But if you look at like what you said, if you look at the premise of the Ewoks and that lore and what he's talking about them being the underdogs, that where the Empire was not even suspecting that these cute little beings that we see as bears in our reality are harmless. And they can walk all over them, kind of deal. So they were not even not much of a thought. Although when you get into the lore, they're little savages. They literally will eat people.
Yeah, that's exactly what they wanted to do, And I get it, like, because I'm like the ending of Gen X. So I rep Gen X all the time. But I mean, I'm like at the very back end of Gen. So I can understand somebody that's 9 years older, 8 years older than me, and like the darkness of the ending of Empire, and thinking it's going to go even further. But you get that later on in Revenge of the Sith. But I mean, as a 19-year-old who watched The Phantom Menace, like I wasn't like crying or complaining about Jar Jar Binks. I mean, I know that the reason that he's in the story for the same reason like they had 3PO and all the movies for the the levity and stuff, and for the kids and whatnot. That doesn't take away like all the awesomeness of the Phantom Menace, just like the Ewoks don't take away from the throne room scene. I mean, the whole Return of the Jedi movie is fucking awesome, dude. Like I'd name a part that you got bored at or didn't like. I mean, I just don't think that it exists.
Yeah, people in the chat, can you say there's any boring moments in Return of the Jedi? I mean, literally, but I mean, can you really say that for all of the 6 movies, really?
the speeders on freaking the forest moon of Endor. It's not actually Endor, right? It's the forest moon of Endor.
Yeah, the
But
forest
yeah,
moon.
there's so much awesome stuff. And then when we just did that rewatch on the Phantom Menace, you know, just like Naboo and like the work George put into that, just awesome, dude. Like there's not a dull moment in any of the 6 movies. That's why I always say they're S tier. You know, I know they have their flaws, blah 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 blah, but to me they're all 10 out of 10.
Yeah. But what movies don't have their flaws, really? You know,
yeah.
I mean, every movie has some type of flaw or some type of moment or some type of script that maybe kind of feels a little off. You're like, wait a minute, what happened here, or whatever. There's always going to be something, and if there is ever something perfect, which I doubt there's anything that's perfect in our world, I think that maybe it would be too boring. Because it'd be so fucking predictable.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the thing with the prequels, and that's why I always tell people, like, what did you want? You wanted George Lucas to do a regurgitated, that you would know the same people would have criticized him for being lazy and just doing a rehash. So he did something really cool. And I remember, like, because, you know, now you hear about the George story treatments and about the Darth Maul and Darth Talon thing. But I remember hearing rumors about him getting into the Wills and like the microscopic world of midichlorian. Like he was, you know, spitballing all kinds of different stuff. And I wouldn't put it past George to get into the midichlorians and all the shit that people said they didn't like, because that's how he kept things interesting, you know?
Yeah, the midichlorians and the Wills, basically they're a story together.
Yep.
Is the premise of Star Wars. That's how Star Wars started. People don't realize that.
That's why I would have loved to see it. And when you see it written in the Plagueis book, like it really shows what you can do with it. And like, you know, and that gets into the whole science versus religion stuff and all that. And that book of Sith that I've been really delved into again, like that gets into the like philosophical differences and kind of, you know, hashes even more stuff out about the Sith and, you know, characters.
And Plagueis is the one that went more scientific as a Sith rather than going to the Sith alchemy of messing with the Force and trying to dominate and all this other stuff.
Yeah, that's what I almost say, because like a lot of people will refer to it as alchemy. I'm like, not really though. Like I'm almost like want to say it's like biology or like, you know what I'm saying, or epidemiology or whatever, because it's like learning the, oh no, that would have been Tenebris, sorry. But yeah, it's just like learning the ins and outs about that. But yeah, he actually told Palpatine not to study Sith sorcery and creation of holocrons and stuff like that, which towards the end of the book, right before he takes him to his lab on Sojourn and whatnot, Plagueis is gone or doing whatever, and that's when Palpatine starts looking into doing like the sorcery and alchemy and
and that's probably what led him to also like I wouldn't say extend his life, but the Force transfer, because you'd have to learn Sith alchemy to do that, you know. So
exactly. Yeah.
So Matthew says here, or is asking, when did you get into Marvel, and did you read all the Marvel Star Wars?
So I read some of them. So here's the way it went, and it's all very like I had everything when I was a kid and shit. So Marvel, like I had Secret Wars toys like in 84, 85, whenever they came out. Like I had all of those. I had duplicates of some of them. My cousin's a nerd. I meant to hit him up before I came on. He has probably enough memorabilia stuff to retire on. Like he has any franchise from the 80s or late 70s, like he has everything, dude. And he kept it all in great shape. He made good life choices, unlike me. But we were both into both, right? So I don't think I really collected Marvel comics until I was like 10 or something like that. But yeah, so he's been collecting Star Wars comics since I don't even know when. I don't know if it was since how young he was, but he actually still collects them. Like he still collects the High Republic shit and all that. I'm pretty sure he collects all of it. But yeah, so we kind of like, because back then, you know, as kids, we had to like work for shit and do shit, right? So I would try to mow extra lawns and do whatever I could do to get to the comic store, like on a Wednesday. But you had to start getting like selective, because I'm a massive X-Men fan too. So I didn't read a lot of Star Wars comics. The ones I did read were mostly my cousins. Because I had a limited income on what I could buy. So I'd like got Spawn when Spawn came out, and I collected X-Men and Iron Man and Spider-Man, different like Marvel, like, so those type of Marvel stories. But for me, the EU is always more book driven. I remember like Tim had brought up a few months back, the the displays for Heir to the Empire, like in the comic shop and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, wow. So, you know, I bought, and that's kind of the way I followed the EU. Like I started with Heir to the Empire. Like I didn't read the Han Solo trilogy or the Lando trilogy. And to be honest, I'm one of those that only likes lightsabers and the Force, right? It's not that I'm joking. It's not that I only like that, but that's what I like. Like I like the lore.
We have our likes and stuff.
Yeah, that's why I like the Sith. I love the detail oriented, and a lot of that we didn't really have. Like, because even with Tales of the Jedi comics, like they give you a good amount of information, but it doesn't really like deep dive and crack that shit open until KOTOR came out, you know. And then once George said you can do the Old Republic and stuff, and then they just started dropping all the books, and we were getting shit left and right, and that brought me kind of back into the EU, not back into it, but like made me focus on that like a lot more, because I didn't read like, and I still haven't actually, Truce of Baccarat, Courtship of Princess Leia, a lot of those I kind of skipped. So I did Heir to the Empire, and then I did the Jedi Academy trilogy. I've read a couple of the X-Wing books, but not like in order or not, you know, again, I was like, what, 13 or something like that when those came out. But yeah,
right.
I didn't.
So you're basically telling me my next question is, what is your first EU experience?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm just gonna
go ahead and slow this down a little bit.
All right.
Yeah. So with all that said, so what's your first EU experience like? What really got you into the EU?
It was Heir to the Empire for sure. And like Melissa Lord's essay about, you know, kids didn't know when Disney deemed it non-canon. Like people weren't like, oh, well, these are just the books, they don't count. People never fucking thought that, dude. Never at all, you know.
Everybody was so curious about what happened, wanted to know what happened after Return of the Jedi with Luke and Han and Leia and all their favorite characters. They went to the books. They went to the EU to find out. No one was concerned about continuity or canon because they figured it was all tied in. And Star Wars is the only franchise, well, the only major franchise that kept a continuity to the movies. And they've got, George received like world records for that. So very interesting.
And Star Wars is multimedia. It's not just a movie franchise.
Yeah, it's multimedia.
And George knew it from the beginning, because that's why he asked for licensing rights for toys and stuff. Like he had everything kind of planned out, and he like revolutionized like lots of stuff. Like that's why I don't like. So I'm an extremist when it comes to like defending George Lucas. I know he's a human being. I'm an individualist. I don't like,
he's very flawed too with his
stuff like that. But again, it's like my thing, because it's like, dude, like the things people complain about and bitch and complain about, it's like stupid. Like I haven't read all of Dune and all that, but I can guarantee you, I know Star Wars is more expansive than Dune, because I know that Dune doesn't have 100 and fucking however many novels and comics and video games and having it all tying in and all that. Like nobody can match that. Like it's unmatchable. So, and I challenge anybody to tell me any different. Like, again, I don't know the universe of Dune, and I'm not shitting on it. I actually just watched the second movie, but yeah, it's like, I just know what, and when Shadows of the Empire came out, that was a big multimedia project too. That was like the first one that like had everything tying in. So,
right. Even with its own soundtracks too. And that was friggin' amazing. So I did ask you about what movie you started with first, and you alluded to basically Return of Jedi being your favorite movie, or is that one that you started with and not your favorite, but you're nostalgic?
So if I rank them on favorite, I would say Revenge of the Sith, my favorite, because of course I love the Sith. And I would rank Return of the Jedi second, and I'd rank Empire third, but I don't like to say I rank The Phantom Menace last or Attack of the Clones last, because I think all of the movies are awesome. When I see one Star Wars movie on a TV or something like that, I usually don't go just watch that episode. Like I'll usually watch the whole saga, you know. Like,
you're like, I'm just down for it all. Just watch it all.
You know, I just love it all, you know. I mean, look at all the stuff in Attack of Clones, the Battle of Geonosis and all the Jango Fett stuff, and like, you know, and Anakin's sand lines and all, like that's all I've already like told people. Like, you can say what you want about that, but he's an inexperienced boy, like, and everybody as a kid growing up had that experience with a girl. Like, dude, it's not like out of the ordinary. And he was a slave who was isolated.
Right, he's isolated, and courtship was never taught by his mother, never taught by the Jedi, because their thing is like, you know, no relationships, you know, kind of deal until Luke came into the picture and created the new Jedi Order. But that's a whole different story in itself right there. But there's reason why Anakin had to be awkward in certain scenes, and it kind of sticky kind of dialogue, because that's his awkwardness. So
Yep, and that goes hand in hand with character.
Mm-hmm. All right, so with that, we're still kind of in the movie area here. Do you have a favorite duel scene?
I have several. There's so many underrated, but yeah, like I would probably say like the throne room Return of the Jedi, like that, the Jedi's Fury, that shit is awesome. When he like goes off on him with Leia, just the whole part when he's toying with him, when he's tossing the lightsaber, Sidious's manipulation of him, when he gets him to try to strike him, like that whole throne room scene. And then also you have like later on, obviously the opera scene in Revenge of the Sith. But yeah, I mean, like I like the Anakin Obi-Wan duel. I mean, I know they put a lot of work into that. I know I think it was, I can't remember. I've got to go back and rewatch the extras on that, but I think it's like 10,000 people just to do the Mustafar scene. When you add like the grips and the sound and this person and that person, the clothes, I think they made like 20 something or 30 something versions of Anakin's robes, right? And Obi-Wan's, right? Cause it was getting spattered with like lava. So they'd have him change out throughout the scene. You know, just stuff like that. So that scene, that's great. I think the Palpatine versus Yoda is like super underrated. Now, of course, that's more of like a Force duel. Like, you know, they kind of do the saber fighting, but then it kind of gets into the Force battle, but he's like tossing the Senate seats and shit at Yoda. Like that stuff's awesome.
Yeah,
they're and laughing at him.
Their power, their power in the Force, their strength in the Force and stuff. And yeah, so you get to see the two big dogs, I guess you can say, even though Yoda's itty bitty.
Exactly. Yeah, and like Empire, like obviously Vader's toying with Luke like the whole time, dude. He's one-handed fighting him, just tossing him on the ground, and then he's throwing shit at the back of his head. Like, it's just all so great, man. I love Star. And then Duel of the Fates. Like, come on. I mean, oh wait, the Wokalite just passed Duel of the Fates, right? They just had the best fight scene.
Oh, I was gonna get into that. Okay, so I'm trying not to go into that realm there, because
I know
Star Wars. But someone told me on Twitter that Headland used the team who built the choreography to Revenge of the Sith duels fights. And I'm like, Nick's the one who did that. He was not involved.
Yeah, no, not that I know of.
You know, no, I think that would be a big fucking deal if they brought in the actual choreographer. That's Nick.
They would have used that like to market it too. Yeah, for sure.
Right. That would be something that's been like, oh, well, you EU fan, they would be throwing that shit in our face to make it look like it's more better, more valid, all of that. And also I was just laughing. I'm like, since when was there a team who choreographed what Nick did? Now he may have had help, you know, people who helped, because there's always hired hands to help the main person and stuff like that. So I thought that was ridiculous. I thought that was crazy. It's like they go to certain levels to defend their shit. You know, so definitely. And here we're talking about what makes Star Wars great, and that's George Lucas's era of Star Wars here. And and so let me see here, where am I at? So do you have a favorite space battle for the movies?
Oh man. You know, the Return of the Jedi one's fucking awesome too. So is a Battle over Coruscant's great. Obviously
that's my favorite one. That's my favorite
Battle over Coruscant. Yeah, I mean it really is freaking expansive, dude. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
but I like again, like it's a trap. I love anyone who's heard me read Heir to the Empire and all that comics. I try to do a good Akbar on that, but yeah, so I like Akbar. He's cool.
Yeah, you know, because when I love the space battles from the OT era, they're amazing, they're awesome because of the time frame, that like back in the 80s, and the technology George had to use still was above what we would see back then. He was very innovative and stuff. But once we got to like Revenge of the Sith, and even in Attack of the Clones, where you have Boba Fett trying to or Obi-Wan trying to escape Boba Fett, you know, that, and when they're going through the asteroids and stuff like that, that was phenomenal. Just and stuff.
Oh, and the
But
sound on the
yes.
freaking sonic detonator, like that's like
Yes.
never had been done. They've never done anything like, and that's the thing. George like pushed it, and that's why he knew I can't do this prequel era stuff yet. Like he already knew that. He was sending people like Joe Johnson to like USC to like become like to learn more stuff, and then he went on and did like the Captain America movie. But they were like oh my gosh, man. I did a diatribe. I remember Tim made a meme out of it on Twitter, and it's a person with like a long extended phone, like for a chat post or whatever. And I put all the exemplary shit about George Lucas because like he really did. Like I know he wasn't over at ILM creating everything and all that, no shit, but he had the vision and he had the drive and he pushed people past their, I want 110% out of everybody. You know what I'm saying? And then later on, revisionist history, you get people who try to tear down that legacy and cry and complain and this, that, and the other. But I mean, hey, when you're upgrading and you're changing your business around and stuff like that, sometimes you got to cut dead weight, and even if if you have prima donnas too, it's like, because I hear lots of people, Gary Kurtz is all about him. I mean, hey, sometimes you got to cut the prima donnas out too, or the people that think they're worth more than they are when it's your vision, your product, and you're doing what you got to do. So
the very fact that George made his company independent from Hollywood, because he even said, you can even find interviews of him saying, I didn't want them telling me what to do. You know, and because of that, he did a lot of innovative stuff. He advanced the film industry, even though he didn't want to be a part of it. He advanced it, and then when the PT era came about, and I think it was the Two Towers, Lord of the Rings Two Towers, he's the one that he sent a worker from ILM to help with Gollum.
Yeah, and I think it was Jurassic Park, right? When Jurassic Park came out and they were able to blend practical with CGI, that's when he knew it was time to like start doing the prequels and shit.
Yeah, exactly. I think Lucasfilm ILM is credited for Jurassic too.
Yep. Yeah, and they did like Dragon's Lair or Dragon. What's the one from like the 80s, dude? Is it Dragon Slayer? Whatever, dude. And it was obviously not that good, but they did the CG on that. Like they were involved in like so many different. George did Howard the Duck. I know people like, oh, it's not that. Dude, that movie's awesome, dude. it's an awesome shitty movie, like.
It is. It's one of those stupid, funny movies that you just love to watch. There's movies like that. It doesn't mean it's good. It just means it's entertaining, and the fact that it's stupid and it's goofy and it's still entertaining for the quality.
And it was Marvel and rated R too, right?
Oh God, that was crazy.
Yeah, Dragon Slayer. That's it, DJ. Yeah, I thought that was the one, but because that was high fantasy, like fantasy, dark fantasy. That was a big thing in the early 80s too. So.
Yeah. So when I see like the Battle Above Coruscant, and then when I'm revisiting the X-Wing novels, because just what the hell, I just picked them up and started reading them again. And so when I imagine like them going out on their missions and stuff like that, I can kind of visualize it a lot more efficiently by even thinking about Battle Above Coruscant and like all the effects. And even though the X-Wings weren't like the Jedi starfighters, basically became the X-Wing or some, I forgot which one it is, but anyways, the evolution of the starfighters.
Yeah, and, like the interceptors. I think I'm terrible with ships. Like I always mess them up too. So
yeah, and so it gives me a greater like imagery in my head. I'm like, oh, okay, this is what it would look like. This is what the colors would look like. This is what it looked like in space, and and so it just gives you that broader expansion in your mind's eye when you're reading and stuff. So it's quite amazing. You can have visuals, and then when you read, you can apply those visuals to that and still be in that world of Star Wars.
I definitely need to revisit, and I'm sure when I read, I'm sure I'm going to remember. I'm pretty sure Rogue Squadron's one of them, but and I think the other maybe is Guard's Return or whatever. But I think like it's gonna click like when I reread it. When you reread, you're like, wait a minute, I think I've read this before. But yeah, I'd like to do it now, especially part of Star Wars too is like when you reread or revisit it as you get older, a lot of things change, it's kind of like that with it was like that with Marvel too, So, and that's the thing again, I was doing Marvel stuff and Star Wars stuff and playing the game, but I loved playing like the space battle games and stuff, like even Jedi Interceptor, which isn't that good of a game. I love that. But back in the day, it was It was the X-Wing game, but TIE Fighter, like, because that was the
So
sequel
would you
to the
say those
X-Wing.
favorite games then? Because that's what
No, I wouldn't
coming up.
call them my favorite, but they're really good. Like I just loved playing All-Star. One of my favorites probably Battlefront 2. And like my oldest daughter was like 2 or 3 or something. So I was, hanging out at home more, doing video games more again because there was a gap there when obviously you start doing other shit. But yeah, Battlefront 2, I loved the story and the Switch, and I just loved the planets and going to Megiddo and like all the different places and shit.
Yeah.
And Revenge of the Sith was cool too, and they had the alternate ending. So it's hard. One day I'm going to do a ranking Star Wars video game thing. I just went to an arcade thing like about 2 months ago or whatever, and I played the original where you fly through and you got to blow the Death Star up, and it's like polygons and stuff. Like, so yeah, there's so many great ones. I loved KOTOR 1 and 2. Melissa Lord sent me them, and I'm like, I can't download these because if I do that, my channel will fucking go in the dumps,
We're stuck on those. Oh my goodness. So we have Gibbet here. It says OG and Marvel Purist. What's your thoughts on Jude Watson's book, and what's your favorite book from Jedi Apprentice and Jedi Quest?
So Jedi Apprentice is the youth books.
Mm-hmm.
I have not read those. That's one of my. So I'm going back to Young Jedi Knights because I've read all of the adult novel. Well, maybe not all, but 90% of the adult novels with Jason and Jaina. And I want to read the Young Jedi Knights and see how much that impacts the story, going back and going through it all. Because, I'm sure it makes the arcs even that much cooler, when you start.
Yes, exactly. And so before we're now going to start getting to the EU part, but first of all, Darth Go-Faced, another channel member, thank you so much, gifted 20 OG Star Wars memberships. I greatly appreciate this. Now they're going to be more aware of this channel when we have these talking EUs and other thing that's going on. And then I'm thinking like maybe I'll have like artist dates with you guys when I'm working heavily in the studio, but I still want to communicate with you guys to keep the channel alive, because I have a whole year to get my art exhibit ready to go, and I need to do 40 more, or actually 20 more paintings and stuff like that. So I have a busy year in front of me. So thank you so much.
That's awesome. Ghostface, good stuff.
Yes. And yeah, so with that, who is your favorite author for the EU? It's hard to think. Or if you want to list them out, at least from top.
So I'm a big James Luceno simp. Like it's funny, we were just messaging back about Luceno today.
Yes.
But I like Drew Karpyshyn a lot too. Okay. And I like Matthew Stover. Like I think Traitor is one of the best of the NJO books for sure.
Oh yes. Yeah.
The scene, the battle scenes in that freaking man, it's good. And then the Revenge of the Sith novelization, obviously, like, man, he does really good stuff. And then I love Troy Denning too. I mean, Star by Star, freaking. And I know, and I wouldn't say she's my favorite, but like Karen Travis, I know she gets a lot of shit, but I think like when you read Legacy of the Force, I think her like writing style, like it kind of flows with what Denning and Olsen are doing also, where NJO, which it was their first go at it and all that, and they did a great job, but like you had certain stories in NJO where it was just Jason pretty much. Like, I mean, obviously you had the side characters, and then there was a book, was it Dark Journey, where you had just Jaina, and then some of the writing styles were different. I mean, overall, it's still great. I love and NJO brought that darkness and the stakes and all the stuff that we didn't really have yet in Star Wars. So, but yeah, like, I mean, I would probably say like Luceno, Karpyshyn, and Denning probably, just because Stover didn't get to do. I mean, he doesn't have as many. Well, I mean, I guess him and Karpyshyn almost have the same number of books, but
maybe he had like half of, or not even half. He like had just a little under half of the X-Wing series.
Yeah,
and then did he contribute with the comics too?
I
know there's some comics that he's done, and then I think Union might be one too. I might be wrong, but I know some like so there's some comics that he was involved with too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I always say that like Stover, Luceno, and Karpyshyn are like the Sith triumvirate, right? Because they know that like the dark side, so like that's like a lot of the work that stands out. But Luceno was like big in like NJO, like right. He was the
one that they went to.
He had the Bible.
Right? Yeah, so he was the one that was the leader, I guess you could say, for that project to get going. And then the other authors worked with him as well. That's why I've been in arguments about how some people who didn't like how Jason turned out after New Jedi Order, they're like, that's not what Lucino was trying to do. She wasn't trying to go dark. Well, each one of those writers and under Lucino left doors open for Jason to go dark.
Well, and originally before they even came up with the Vong, from the research I had been doing recently, they wanted to kind of do like a Legacy of the Force story. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But they wanted Anakin to turn dark, and then Jason to be the one that died. And George, who doesn't like, he didn't care about the EU and it wasn't canon, blah 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 blah. He wouldn't let him do it because he didn't want confusion or like regurgitation of Anakin being the one that fell to the dark side. So instead, he said it was okay to kill Anakin solo, and that Jason could, you know, turn to the dark side, which they didn't do yet. And then something else I learned researching this, when because I was just doing this like the other day, when Vision of the Future is actually kind of a setup like for NJO, and I didn't like realize that. And they don't really get into the Vong or anything, but they just say like there's this alien threat or something like that, or whatever it's. And I never realized that. Like, I mean, now that I saw it, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense, you know, from reading the book. But and it was a continuity team was it was Lucino and Daniel Wallace. And it's funny, Daniel Wallace did a bunch of the source books, including Book of the Sith, because again, I've been Book of Sith, because I've been like deep diving into that thing, dude. And I'm like,
I've been doing
really
that too.
did a great job expanding the lore, you know, right before the freaking Disney switch, you know.
Well, yeah, and then like with the Book of the Sith, which some parts pissed me off in it, because they have like, why the hell are you gonna add Mother Talzin into this Book of Sith? She's not a fucking Sith.
Yeah, and it's the shoehorn validation of TCW crap, right? I mean, that's kind of what I look at it as, because Palpatine says these people move the Order forward, and sources sin. I could have sworn she was in. I think she's like mentioned only once in one of the the little small what is it called? Lost Tribes of the Sith, one of those stories.
Yeah, okay.
She's only mentioned it though. I could have sworn she was actually in it, but no. Like, so just the lore and description of her character and all the shit that they put in that book for her, that was awesome, dude. Because I just like did that. When I did the celebration panel for Melvin, I like really deep dove into that. And it's funny because I talked about how Disney hates the Sith, and so do its fans. So I talked to Melvin. I already clipped them all. I just got to do all the visuals, because when I went on, I didn't have I wasn't able to like share and all that because whatever was going on with StreamYard. So I'm going to go back and make those videos, because I think a lot of them are very fitting. And because we didn't actually get a real Sith story with this Disney shit, I'm going to throw that. I'm going to throw that out and get some of those videos out. But yeah, it's like, it's just freaking awesome, man. Like, I think I'm going to really buy like all the source. I have the Old Republic encyclopedia too. It's packed away right now in storage, but I loved that thing when I first got it too. Like, just like they're just awesome. The source books.
That one I have to get. That's one of them I don't have. So I have to get on the ball. People in the chat and everybody listening, get on the ball. Get your sources collected, because you never know. You never know what's going to, because they're not reproducing them anymore. They're not publishing them anymore. So we're kind of like on a dated time frame here of like, get your shit before it's done.
Yeah, I think I paid $75 for mine, which I know is like hot, and that's without a dust cover too, but it's in pretty good shape, you know, like the spine's good and all that. So it was worth it. And that's kind of why I jumped on Young Jedi Knights, because I know like those, there wasn't like a lot of reprints of those. And I am going to do the Jedi Apprentice series too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I look everywhere.
Yeah. So they still have those books up for sale. So they still have like a nice stock, I guess you could say. So with all this being said, how did Star Wars impact your life? Big question here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was like played a major role in my life. Again, me and my cousin, like we bonded, like we had all the toys and all that stuff. So it was like there's lots of parts of Star Wars. And again, I was really heavy into Marvel too. We also did DC and all that stuff. But like, so Star Wars, especially as I got older, like, and you reflect back, like that's just the whole thing. Like Star Wars is for kids, or Star Wars this, or no, Star Wars, like when you really start digging into it, especially with the EU and everything, like it
Right.
only like gets better. It's like wine, right? It just ages with time. It's just better and better and better. And just like all the philosophical stuff and all the things we were just talking, I think on Twitter, somebody today about Disney taking the Kurosawa thing, like literal, like, hey, if we throw a freaking like ninja looking person, like George was using story elements that were used by Kurosawa.
Yeah, themes.
You know, he wasn't, he may have done some stuff, but he wasn't like, hey, let's just full on make this a ninja freaking movie, you know, or a Shogun movie. It's like, dude, come on, like, but yeah, I mean, it was a greatest. It was a great escape, Star Wars and Marvel. That's why I did I didn't do it because, you know, those were my big, huge influences in life. Great escape. Escapism was great back then. And back then there was certain types of messaging and stories, but they weren't the story. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's okay too, you know? So, and you never knew like people's outworld, like out of universe politics and stuff like that, like never came up, you know? And it was just great escapism. Again, everything, the toys, the books, the comics, you know, the video games, especially. I think Soul Assassin mentioned earlier in the chat, like when E3, like when they do those back in the day, everybody would wait for the Star Wars game because LucasArts was fucking awesome. Like they really got their
they were
stuff
phenomenal, leading gaming, you know, company, or, you know, it's actually a department of Lucasfilm, but leading in the gaming industry at the time.
Yeah, and they took risks too.
Star Wars. Yeah, it wasn't always Star Wars for them either.
They took risks. BioWare was not that big. Like, yeah, they had like some stuff on their resume, but they took a massive risk. And I watched a behind the scenes thing because I just did a stream with Grizzy and Fracture Filter about KOTOR. But yeah, like they were like in talking about the lore and stuff and checking in with Lucas, you know, Lucasfilm, Lucas Limited, whatever, like as they were creating the game, like all the time, you know, they were really all into all that. So, you know, and again, they didn't always take the easy path. They were given the choice. I think you can do like an after episode 2 or between episode 1 and 2 or, you know, whatever, or you can go away in the past. So they're like, oh, let's do that. That way we're not, you know, soiling like any of it, like having issues with any of the continuity or any of that. So, but yeah.
That was me, and that was me. You were talking about the Kurosawa.
Yes. Yeah, no, I know. I remember. Yeah.
We
were both saying the same thing, but not like we knew what we were saying, but we weren't like, oh yeah.
Okay. I know what's so funny about that is like these Disney fan shills or whatever you want to call them. They take everything literal. So like literally they'll say, oh, the Empire's the Nazis and the Emperor's Nixon or whoever, you know, kind of deal. And I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, Bush, Cheney, and all this stuff.
They were Lucas was like, I'm gonna take some of these characteristics or his ideals and use them as themes for this character. They don't realize that that's what he was doing, was taking ideas he was inspired by, but it doesn't mean that they're literally them. You know.
Yeah, well, and that's why those stories are timeless, because they're not just shoehorned to be just one thing that fits in. It's like, no, it's something everybody can relate to, you know. Well, we're going to get into the EU and stuff, and you know, there's so many. It's like Disney acts like they just created female characters for the first time or something like that. You know how many badass females are in fucking Star Wars pre-Lucas or pre-Disney Lucasfilm? It's like, dude, you have no freaking clue. And they had 2 of them set up fucking for the long run. They could have just continued those stories, never decanonized the EU, and they'd probably be in a hell of a way better shape. But you know, obviously that's not what their goals were.
Just imagine getting the Sword of the Jedi, or getting like Jaina and her marriage to Jagged, and the formation of the Fel Empire and the formation of their family. And then if you're familiar with her talking to Jagged about creating a sister order to her uncle's order, and how that ended up being their knights, you know, and stuff like that. And just imagine if we got all of that. We can only imagine the head, but just imagine, you know, like the expansion from there. Like you said, a female lead was already set up for the next generation.
Yeah, and it was Jaina, and it was the Sword of the Jedi. And then they could have went in the past, and they could have filled in properly, instead of, hey, let's do this 200 years before, Phantom Menace or 300 years, they could have continued where Bane had left off, and they had Darzana, and she was
Right.
I touched on
That
this
is,
on Melvin's panel too. She's
yeah.
a female Sith
Mhm.
sorceress, so they haven't done Sith sorcery yet on the big screen. They could have done that. She had Darth Cognis, which was an Itachi female, also as her apprentice.
Mhm.
Totally different force ability for her with her precognition. So they had like all this stuff, and then you always hear this. And that's why I said Disney, Star Wars, and their fans, they don't like the Sith, because we've already done the Sith. Like, you don't even know the half of the Sith. Like, there's so much expansive lore on the Sith that you could never run out of Sith villains and types of Sith that you could portray, like in Star Wars, on the big screen, in video games, and whatever, you know. So
Right.
you know, and then Zahn also had the famous, you know, double-bladed lightsaber too, like Exar Kun and Darth Maul. So that would have been great
And it's
too.
that's so funny, and not funny. It's so great to see that Exar Kun was the one that inspired George for Maul's lightsaber.
Yeah, and that's from the EU too, from the Jedi Academy. What do you know? Or from Tales of the Jedi, you know, take your pick. But yeah, that's
Mhm.
like
Mhm. I know, and it's like, you know, like even today, it's like I still get, oh well, the EU was never canon. George never read it, so it was never canon. They throw around all these, like, you know, certain quotes that they love to hump and throw and at you and stuff like that. And they stick to that. And I'm like, dude, do your guys' research, do your work to what you're sharing here, because when you look at the words that may have been said that you're misunderstanding, you can see the action of the owner help creating the lore even for the EU. Even if he says yes or no, and this is what I want, here's some points, this is what we're doing. What he says matters to the EU.
yeah, and there's lots of evidence to it too. Like, and the biggest problem is TCW, which people like Ryan and you guys have been on for a long time.
Yeah.
But like Force Unleashed, right? They wanted to use was it Sidious, right? And have Sidious have a secret apprentice, and George said no, but you can have Vader have a secret apprentice. So
Right.
again, why would he care? It's not canon, it's just a fucking video game. Like, it's
Mhm.
the EU, who cares, right? You know, he
Yeah.
did obviously care. He cared about the Jason. So I think the plan originally, what they wanted to kill Han Solo in NJO, right, in the first
Right.
book, but instead it was Chewbacca.
No,
You
no,
know,
no.
and
They wanted to kill Luke.
oh, was it Luke? I thought it for some reason it
Yes.
was Han, and then George said
No.
no, but you can kill Chewie.
Well, no, this is what he said. Okay, so they wanted to kill Luke. He said no. And then he offered up Leia and Han. George did. And then the writers are like, no, because then we'll have a massive, like, you know, the fans are going to get pissed at us, you know, kind of deal. And so the writers are like, what about Chewie? And he's like, okay.
Yeah, and RA caught some shit for that, right? Whatever.
Yeah, he still caught some
Series
shit.
is, yeah, that series is great, dude. And it's
Yeah.
like he was serving his life debt, you know, and you know, I mean, technically it's to Han, but it's obviously one of his children. So like that scene's just freaking amazing. There's so many, like there's some massive freaking payoffs in that series. I have to go back and read it. I got them, and that's the thing. So people are like, "Oh my gosh!" And it's night, and it is like 19 books. That's intimidating. But when you're buying the books as they're coming out, you're like, "Fuck! When's the next one going to be? You know, when's this
Yeah.
one coming out? You know, it's like totally different." But that series has the worst, and we've talked about this before. The worst freaking abridged versions, like known to man. Like they miss like big parts. Like I remember because I did Vector Prime when I was trying to do a reread on it off of Bootleg Audible, and I was like, I said either this series fucking sucks or I don't remember this correctly. And I'm like, and I know it doesn't suck. You know, I remember a lot of the emotional payoffs and whatnot from it. So I know there's some channels out there. I know Soul Assassins put them out there. I think the YJK audiobooks or something, I think they're one of them. I haven't listened yet to kind of get a feel, but yeah, once I do, like, because the cool thing is, well, there's a lot of YouTube channels that do these unabridged, AI audio, but a lot of it's hit or miss. You know, you want to try to find the AI that you can listen to, like that sounds like most competent for the story.
Theatrical. And like I'm like, we used to joke around for my channel when I first started. and we'd say, oh, Audible needs to be one of your sponsors, because I've always recommended Audible for a reader who gets too busy, that can't really pick up a book and read, or they travel a lot and they leave their book or whatever. But now I'm like, okay, so go to these other channels here, because I'm all about getting the unabridged version of the novel, because like right now, like half of the X-Wing series, even though it's under Disney now, they're abridged. So that means like it's very hot, it's very plot heavy, but there's still nuances that probably helps the story arc and the plot that's taken out. So you feel like there's something missing, because that's unabridged. They're not very fun to listen to if they're not done well. I mean, yeah, abridged, not unabridged, abridged.
Yeah, exactly.
So and so I recommend, okay, so like Kenobi book, for example, that's unabridged. That's the whole entire story. That is phenomenally done.
Yeah,
if you have to listen to it, you have all the sound effects that George loves to put in, theatrical stuff. You get the emotion through it, all of that, all of it. And so like I said, I recommend the source if you need to listen to, you're not necessarily a reader or you're too busy, anything that's unabridged for Star Wars.
Yeah, when we did our deep dive on my channel, we were talking about how they had the supermarket sound and shit at Annalene's store. And then you have the speeders. I love the speeder where it's like, and that's in lots of them. It's like in the Plagueis one.
Yeah.
When they're bringing Palpatine up, when he's getting questioned by the Grand Protectorate and all, or Grand, whatever they're called.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I just love it. And it's in lots of them. Like, and then just, oh yeah. And the sound and the some of the music they mix in and they get it. Like, that's the thing. They got it. Like, Star Wars is everything, it's the story, it's the characters, it's the music, it's the sound effects, it's all of the shit, you can't just pick 3 or 4 things that are Star Wars-ish and then call it Star Wars.
Right. And then Mr. Grizzly is here. Hola to you. Thank you for dropping in and hanging out with us.
Yeah, Grizzy loves he's got a lot of knowledge on KOTOR for sure. He loves that game.
Yeah. And then Darth Ghostface again. Thank you for 10 Star Wars membership, OG Star Wars membership. Thank you so much. You guys are being gifted tonight, and I greatly appreciate that. What Darth Ghostface is doing. Thank you so much. Amazing.
And I know I sidetracked the conversation, so if you got more
that's okay.
stuff to hot seat me on, let me know.
Oh yeah, no, we're getting close to your first quiz, so just hang in there. Zim the Despot is here, and OG stream. Best birthday gift ever. Well, happy birthday to you. I'm so glad that you're taking the time listening in. You could be doing something different, so I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So the next one. So we could go off in a little bit of tangents, but it's very educational. This is what Talking EU is about. So who is your favorite EU character and why?
So obviously you put Darth Bane up there.
We had to choose after, so you could share what you shared with me, like, because it was very reasonable. I understood why you named these people off and for what reasons and stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, so it's obviously the EU is so expansive. And again, I have the same problem with the movies, right? I like them all, some a little more than others, but I still think they're all badass. I think if Plagueis had more books, he may be the one, but I mean, even though they covered lots of stuff, but Bane's whole arc and again, he's the protagonist, but he's not good. You are rooting for him in one sense, but he's evil, and they make sure they keep that like in line, and they all do that with all the Sith stories, even Darth Malgus. When you get to him and his Twi'lek, same thing. It's like there's some conflict on it, but he's evil. Like there's no getting around it, and it's like that with all the Sith stories in the EU. But there's so many, like I told you, okay, well, if I pick my favorite female character, it'd be Darzana. And again, she has kind of limited 3 books also, but I would have loved to see them carry on with that. I think overall, probably Jaina has the best arc. Jaina or Jay. I mean, they're involved in so many of the stories.
Oh, God,
and then like Kip Duran, he's like the normal straight up like people in the real world type person, because he's like, and everything he points out about Luke, like in like Jedi Academy and some of the things that make him like trust the spirit of Exar Kun and all that in a way. it's all kind of comes to fruition in NJO, right? Because after
Mhm.
Anakin dies in NJO, that's when Luke kind of reflects back like, oh, I hesitated on this, that, and the other, and I'm indecisive. And a lot of those things are things Kip Duran had said back in the like Jedi Academy series and like through into New Jedi Order. So like, it's just so hard, you know? And obviously I love Leia as a female and her character and whatnot. But yeah, I would say like Zana and Jaina are probably my two favorite females. I know lots of people like Mara Jade. I found out I find her very whiny. Like she obviously changes, like and evolves, but especially the way Mark Thompson. Wow, I remembered his name. I always forget his name.
Jade Wine. Oh my god.
Yeah, dude. I mean, and the way Mark
very
does the whiny voice, like it's fucking hilarious, dude. But
that's hilarious. I do like her. I do like her little like little duel fight with Vader in was it called Allegiance?
yes, I haven't read that one actually. That's one of the few Mara Jade books I probably haven't read.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely need to get onto that. See,
Yeah, that's a good
I
one.
have favorites that I revisit, like the Bane trilogy. So literally every Christmas or Halloween, it's because my wife loves decorating and shit. So, but I'm the one that does most of the decoration. She goes buys them all. So, you know, I do the man shit. But like the Bane trilogy, I usually listen to it every Christmas or every Halloween, depending. And then I listen to other stuff for the other holiday. But I revisit it like just about once a year, you know, and I've done that for quite a long time. And I just love it, man. Like some of the stuff, it's kind of like in the Plagueis book, the very cinematic, like just listening to it or reading it, you know, just the way they describe the battles. I think Karpyshyn does a great job. The duel on Tython, that's like one of the best battles, you know, written in Star Wars, in my opinion, you know. And then obviously the Last Stand of Gannard Rysode, I would say, is like up there too.
Oh, that one right there. I made it a short. That was an awesome, like, audible listen to. Man.
Oh, yeah. And then Jaina versus Jason a couple times. Those are both freaking dope. And then obviously the Revenge of the Sith novelization that Stover does is like freaking.
Oh, God.
And obviously, I think Gannard Rysode, that's in Traitor, right? That's Stover's book also. So Stover, especially, he really has the battle scenes down, but then so does Karpyshyn. So yeah, it's just crazy. But Bane, like, I did a video on it like a couple months back and all that, but he's like very, I think, underrated, because I think a lot of people just think, oh, he created the rule of two and this, that, and the other. But he was like, he had some of the most powerful Sith lightning. And then he also was very like cunning, and he was like, I always say he's like an archaeologist and a historian, because, you know, yeah, he kind of strolled into Korriban and you know, whatever, and was kicking some ass. But then when he was down in the dumps and he did all the studying in the freaking the Korriban library and all that, and he was learning about all the Sith, and then he's holocron hunting, and then his training with Darzana. Well, and it's so descriptive in the book too. Like, she's short in stature and this, that. Therefore, she's using an Exar Kun's double-bladed lightsaber, but it's also shorter. The blades are shorter to fit her stature, and because of this, she will never overpower all of her enemies. Therefore, she will become an impenetrable wall by the way she uses the saber. And when the time is right, she'll use her Sith sorcery to overtake her enemy's mind and defeat them and shit. And she uses that tactic against Bane when they fight in the final book. So like all of that shit is really cool, dude. You know, and Bane struggles. Bane has problems. Dynasty of Evil, a lot of people don't like it as much as the other two. I do, but I guess it is like a little less memorable. There's lots of huge coincidences in it. Even though like when Sarah goes to get revenge on him and all that, and she wants to she says, well, how many to the Huntress, how many, you know, assassins do you need? She goes, oh, I just, 10. And she goes, I'm sending 20. Like, cause she already knows this motherfucker's like badass. Even the 20, I was upset when they were able to take him down. I was like, no, they needed 30 or 40, you know.
You're like, that's not enough. That was
yeah, but like that whole shit, that's like so cool, dude. Like, there's so many awesome things, like the when he's flying the Drexel in Rule of Two, like on Duxton. And I just remembered like the last reread I did. This guy is so badass. He got on a Drexel on Duxton and encased himself in the Force in the dark side, and was able to fly to Onderon, because it's the moon of Onderon. So through space without dying.
So close, yeah.
Yeah,
The moon
so
is so
that's
close
insane.
to that. Yeah. Yeah, I had people use that saying, "Oh, that's a silly thing." They, when it comes to like people in space flying, like how when they sent Leia flying in The Last Jedi.
Yeah, but it's not Leia Poppins, right? That he has a force bubble around. He's a powerful Sith. The rule of two's in play. There's not other dark side users really around. So it makes sense, like logically, story wise.
I
And
know, and
again,
that's what
there's a short distance.
Yeah,
and I think
and
it even says it's a short distance in the book, right?
So basically, Maz says, did George Lucas create the rule of two in the prequels? Everything about the rule of two originated in the PT, but the full extent lore and the breakdown of it was shown in the EU. And George and some of the authors together created the rule of two, like everything about it. And then it gave it to the EU.
Terry Brooks, obviously, in the novelization for Phantom Menace.
Right.
And then it was also Kevin J. Anderson. It was actually Kevin J. Anderson's last work on the EU, right? He did Bane of the Sith, and that's a short story.
Right.
And then you have like, but I would always say, like, honestly, because there are continuity stuff with Bane of the Sith and also with the Jedi versus Sith comics.
Yeah,
I don't like them that much. And again, I'm more of a book novel buff and whatnot, but I am familiar with a lot of the comics and stuff, and that is one of the ones that I am familiar with. And there's lots of goofy shit in that, and Karpyshyn like has to include some of it, but he kind of dances around it pretty good. But I would just say read the Darth Bane trilogy. I wouldn't even really read. You can maybe check the comics out for the visuals and stuff like that, but the story is very goofy. It's kind of centered around with some kids, annoying kids, and Rain as Zana is. And then in the Bane of the Sith, it mentions he's going to go find his apprentice. But obviously in the Rule of Two book, or at the end of Path of Destruction, he meets Zana and all that, and then it starts from that meeting and all that, and then her first lesson is meet me on Onderon. And then she's like, oh, you're not bringing me with you? No, find your own way to Onderon. And that's her first.
I was like, damn.
10-year-old. And that is brutal. That's like, she has no fucking remorse. She murders all these fucking people. And then she uses a blaster. She has the guy set autopilot on it, freaking, and then blasts him and then kill her and then kills the other kid too. She's freaking.
And she made it. Dude. Yeah,
and she made it. She made it, and then they fuck with her, and that's when Bane comes flying in, and then you get the Drexel battle and shit with the Beast Riders of Onderon versus Bane. Like, so much cool shit, It's just awesome.
All right. So everybody in the chat, his first little quiz here. What year was Darth Bane born?
Oh. You probably got me on that one. I mean, I would say 1034 BBY, somewhere around there. No. Somewhere, yeah.
Kind of, maybe you're off of about. So it's 1026.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking that's a little too old. I would put him at 34, and I was thinking, yeah, because in Dynasty of Evil, it's been 20 years, and he's starting to get kind of old. But he's not old. So I was thinking he's more in his 20s. But yeah. So that was a good one. Damn.
So with all of our talk about the EU and all this other stuff, what is your favorite EU series? This is a tough one. It's always been a tough one for people.
Trilogy or series, like out of the three?
Series. No, not trilogy, series. So like 9, 19.
Yes. I definitely know it's not Fate of the Jedi. And I know Abeloth, blah, 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 blah. Abeloth is like a little too much for me. You also have, what's her name? Is it E.K. Johnston? Who's the chick that does the books? Or is it, who does 3 of the books? Is it E.K. Johnston or Christy Golden? It's Christy Golden, right?
Christy Golden, yeah.
Yeah, I don't really like her writing style that much. I think the first, like, again, there's awesome, cool stuff that happens in Fate of the Jedi, and they have to, you have stuff like the one Sith, working in unison, enemy of my enemy, whatever. But like the first 2 books, I try to reread, and like it's just so like slow. When they go to the Keldor planet and all that, like I understand what he's teaching Ben and all that, but it just doesn't hit for me. Like I didn't like it at all. With Legacy of the Force, I feel that whole series just like freaking rolls, you know. But
Okay.
it's just hard. Like I would say, I don't know. I would say due to the fact that I've been able to read Legacy of the Force more
Mhm.
recently, multiple times. Like I've only really read NJO1. Now I did recently, because I'm upgrading a lot of my paperbacks into hardcover. So I did recently get the Unifying Force, Vector Prime, Star by Star, and Traitor. So I did kind of thumb through and remember some stuff in some of those books. I didn't get to actually sit down and read them, but I mean NJO, because I was around, like, you know, collecting them during that time. I mean, it was a pretty groundbreaking like shift for Star Wars. Like you had
Right.
stakes, you had people dying left. Like, I mean, obviously there's only 2 or 3 really big deaths or whatever, but those are like massive. And then just, you know, the Vong was a very unique freaking villain. So I guess I'd kind of have to give it to the funny thing is I don't like the ending of Legacy for some reason, and I did just get Invincible on hardcover too, so I have it here. My other
Why don't you
paperbacks
like
are
the
away.
ending of Legacy? So let me hear this. I'm
So I
curious.
feel like, and I don't know, that's why I said I don't know if I need to go back and reread it. I feel like the whole Boba Fett training her, and I realize they get the one fight and she chops his hand off and shit like that, but I just feel like, I don't know why I just don't like the ending. Like, I just feel like there would have been more Mandalorian tactics being used. And I just feel like the ending, when he just kind of like, I don't know. Like, I know he's trying to say, oh, well, here's the reason I did this. I just feel like it's too abrupt, like the
Do
way
you
it
think
happens
that
and all
maybe
that.
Troy didn't catch like, or didn't understand Karen Travis's Mandalorian arc for Jaina? Do you think that could be it?
I don't know. I mean, because I think it's kind of in the book, like when they're again in their first meeting,
Right.
when he doesn't know it's her and she chops his hand
Mhm.
off, right? But
Mhm.
like, I don't know. I feel the ending, and I get what they're doing with, I did it for Alana and this that. Like, I don't know. I've never heard really anyone else complain about it. It's just a me thing. But I still think it's like the greatest series. Like, I love it, But
Yes.
I don't know. For some reason, it just like the ending
It
wasn't
fell a
as
little flat for
satisfying
you.
to me. Yeah, but I still think
Yes.
it's probably the best. Like, it's the thing is, you do you want to recommend it to somebody who hasn't read NJO? No, because then you're losing like lots of character development and lots of
Mhm.
things that happened in Legacy of the Force that relate to NJO, and I
Right.
guess I'm assuming the Young Jedi Knight novels or YA books. But like, yeah, it's hard. It's kind of a toss up, Like, I mean, I guess if I had to say, again, I'm probably just biased because I probably haven't reread NJO enough to give it a fair shake. It's been a long time. So
Right. And so with that, let's stay within the Legacy of the Force series. What is your favorite novel out of it? It doesn't have to be the first or last or whatever. I have a favorite one. So
which one is it? The 5th book? I don't
so you
I
have
mean,
the Bloodline, Tempest, Exile, Sacrifice, Inferno, Fury, Revelation, and Invincible. So I read them in
well,
order.
so I think Bloodlines is actually probably one of Karen
Yeah.
Travis's best
Oh,
books for
she
sure.
like that, her with her Mandalorian stuff. And people are like, oh, Karen Travis, she just wanted to shoehorn the Mandalorians in there. I've had people counter or try to say the series is bad because of her, but I think she done it brilliantly. And I think that's probably why maybe you feel a little bit of like the ending for Jaina didn't feel,
Yeah.
like it should have felt with the setup she got.
Yeah, I just felt like she would have, like, I don't know. I would have thought maybe she had some Mandalorian equipment. Is it like, I don't remember her
Mhm.
using, well,
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I just feel like she would have
Something
used
like
it
that,
more.
yeah.
Yeah. But okay, so I can't remember what book it is, but it's when Jason freaking should have killed Kyle Katarn and Saba. Like, right? Like I
Oh
think
yes, I
Kyle
think
gets
it
shanked
is
like in the chest. It was
Revelation.
basically Disney lore we were dealing with in that book. Like, so that I feel should have happened because it would have made it more on that NJO level with stakes, right? But
Yeah.
that part, when that happens, I'm like, oh shit. Like, Jason's all in. Like, you already kind of knew he was, obviously, but that
Mhm.
lets like he's not messing around now.
Yeah. I believe that
So
is Revelation. I could be wrong, but I believe it's
I think it
Revelation.
is. I think it
Yes.
is. Yeah, because revelation of them finding out that he's like full on Sith now. Because during the series, like Han's at first, like because obviously he's already lost Anakin and Chewie, from the other
Mhm.
series. but he's like, no, you know, that's not Jay, and he could be brought back. And because you even get Jaina kind of gets a little dark in NJO, right? So they think, oh, it's okay, there we can get him back, and this and that, but like he's just way too gone, you know. So there's lots of cool stuff though. Like the last book is freaking awesome, where they do the fake out and you think Luke gets killed too. Like I'm like, what the fuck is this? But even though you know that he doesn't, but like, yeah. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, I would probably. What's the one before Invincible? Because Invincible is the last one, right?
Invincible, then Revelations, that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Revelations right before. Because that's where she's like, was it that one or was it Fury?
No, I think
Revolution was Fury. She wasn't getting her training yet. So Fury is at the end. She's relaxing with Jag, and then she's like, "Hey, I gotta go," and she goes and seeks out training. And then Revelation picks up on that.
Yeah, and I think Fury, that's when he tries to turn Ben, right? And then Luke. Oh wait, no, Inferno. Is it Inferno or what's the one?
No, Inferno's the one where he captures Ben and puts him in the embrace of pain, and Luke goes and finds him. Like he sneaks on, and he's got this like, he's discovered how to hide himself selectively.
Yes.
And then like Ben's coming out of this out of this thing where, he gets blocked from the Force, and he can feel his dad, but Jason's trying to tell him, hey, no, he's dead. I witnessed it. My sister witnessed it. Everybody felt it. He's dead. And then he's like, are you sure about that? And he doesn't reveal that he's feeling his dad.
Yeah.
And he's one. That's my absolute favorite series is Inferno.
Yeah, it's good. And then is that when is it Fury when, because then he chooses that it's not going to be Ben, and then Tahiri, right? And he uses like flow walking and all Fury that to seduce her, and she gets so into it that he like has to do it over and over and over. It's like a drug addiction and shit for her to do that last kiss with Anakin.
Yes, that is so bad. That's so awful what he does to her. Oh my god.
Yeah, and then dude, the Lumaya Luke stuff, like the whole series is just great, and that's why I don't like to rank single. I mean, obviously, like Star by Star and Traitor probably like on NJO stick out, but like
they carry the story. They give you an arc. They set you up for the story.
They're like the payoff.
Star by Star is in the middle where it kind of is like, oh shit. They mean something, they mean shit in this series here.
Even though they did it with Chewie in the first book. But yeah, it reminds you, like, because then it kind of like, but they even have like the destruction of the Jedi Praxium. Like, I think that's like, what is it, Outcast or like one of those ones? I know I'm sorry to jump back into NJO. But like for me with Legacy, it all kind of just blends together. Again, like I said, I feel like the writing styles like all kind of complement each other, like Troy Denning and Aaron Alston and Karen. So like, I just feel like that one meshes just really well, but again, there's all these like epic things that happen in NJO too.
I think that Fate of the Jedi probably would have been stronger if Karen Travis didn't leave.
Oh yeah, because isn't Golden her replacement, right? Pretty much.
Yeah. So I think it would have been a better, stronger story because the Mandalorians are in that story too. And mind you, I love how they took over on the temple and stuff like that, and how Natasi Dali used them and stuff. But just imagine if it was Karen Travis that was writing that.
Oh yeah, dude, and the whole stuff with Jason when he accidentally kills freaking Boba Fett's daughter and shit like that.
Oh, like, that one in Legacy of the Force.
Legacy of the Force, dude, that's great
and
too. Like, there's so many great moments.
Yeah, and Boba sends Han some gauntlet. He's like, I felt like I feel so sorry for you kind of gift. Oh my god! And
you get an explanation on Boba's aging and stuff like that. Like, there's like so much cool stuff.
Basically, the clones too, because you got to realize that these clones from the Clone Wars are biologically altered to mature quicker. So those who want to survive and have escaped the crutches of the Empire and stuff like that, no such thing as a fucking chip, and that's evident in this series too. So they tried, get a hold of, was it Namasu or one of them that makes a serum how aging, kind of like vaccination, I guess you could say, or whatever, to help them with their age and stuff like that. So he's looking for that to not only help him to stay younger in a sense, because he doesn't have the aging properties as the clones do, but he's using it to help him with his cancer and stuff that's going on in his body because he is a clone.
There's so much great stuff. And then when Jaina approaches him, like he already knows about his daughter, right? And then the granddaughter finds out, and that's why she wants to go do whatever, right? But he already knows, right? So it's even, am I remembering it correctly or not?
Yes, yes, you are, because he's using Jaina as a revenge, a way.
Yeah, and it's like risky for her to like go to like think about it. Hey, yeah, my brother just like killed your daughter. Can you train me? Yeah. Like she's definitely taking a risk, And then she kind of like
killed her. They could have just killed her because that she's a Jedi.
Yeah, and
she went to Mandalore.
She's shunned by them, obviously, in the beginning, but then they kind of get like a respect for her after she like.
Oh, they all pulled out their blasters on her. That was hilarious.
Yep.
Like, sure. What, Jedi? And they're like, give her points basically because she doesn't have her weapon on her, So at least they have that kind of respect.
Yep. So. To answer Soul Assassin, I would say honestly, probably the 2000s, and it's not like recency bias or anything. Like 80s was great and all that, and obviously it's like, man, you had freaking lines wrapping around buildings to watch them. And the 90s, you had the big re-releases in the early 90s, and then obviously the PT came out. But like, have you ever seen the meme like 2005's peak Star Wars? I even did a video on that too, because it really kind of is, dude. You get like, and it's because like of the expansion of the expanded universe and how we're just getting everything, because you had like Republic Commando, KOTOR 2. I know somebody in my comments was like, KOTOR 2 came out freaking da-da-da. Okay, yeah, but when it came out on console first, not PC or which way, I can't remember which way it was, so you can count it either which way. But you had KOTOR 2, you had Battlefront 2, you had Republic Commando, you had the Grievous comics, you had obviously Revenge of the Sith video game. That's just video games and stuff, right? And then you had like the Dark Lord, or you had Labyrinth of Evil. And then you had like, I can't even remember them all, but 2005, there's all kinds of stuff flooding the zone. The 90s was cool too, because obviously, the EU, kind of being birthed really, right? Obviously there's novels in the 70s and the 80s, but the 90s is when it really like starts rolling with Heir to the Empire, Jedi Academy, NJO towards the end of the 90s, early 2000s, right? So,
And this is where we could say, pre-Disney Lucasfilm really listened to their fans. They realized once, because I always say that Thrawn trilogy is what do I call it? I think it's overrated. I love it.
Yeah, I do too. It is a great entry point, but I think it is. I think Timothy Zahn's kind of overrated, dude.
And so with my point going from there, because it was well loved from the start, and that it was very epic, and they were great. Like George and his company, they brought in experienced writers for the genre that they want them to write in. So and they were top tier writers as well, Zahn as well, and so when he wrote the trilogy and stuff like that, they realized that the fans are responding. They like continuity. They like a single canon. They caught on to what the fans were responding to, and they adapted, and they decided to keep this continuity going as, as Sue started doing long before Leland and Lily came in and kind of took it up a notch by making the holocron database, I guess you can say, and stuff like that. So they caught on to fans. They did exactly what fans did, and that fucking paid off. It paid off. It kept Star Wars alive.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I totally agree 100%, and I think that's why maybe they were thinking, let's kill Han Solo, because they probably knew Harrison Ford kept wanting the character to die too or something, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, they did so great with continuity. And I think it's, what is it, Tad Larkin, right? I think that's the guy's name. He made it a long time ago, but he does a whole video, and he's not really like anti-Disney or any of that, right? But I mean, he does say like TCW doesn't fit. And when you remove it, like that's where like a majority of the continuity errors happen. I mean, obviously, yeah, you'll find one here and there. Like we brought up the Darth Bane, Bane of the Sith and the comics and stuff. But I guess if you go by the hierarchy, the Bane trilogy of books is going to be higher on the canon hierarchy anyways than the comics or the short story. So it kind of like, works anyways. So,
yeah.
yeah.
And
but
so
yeah.
we have Maz here saying, you know, asking us, did anyone tell Han Solo that his son had turned to the dark side? They all knew, they all experienced. In fact, he was trying to kill his parents in Fury.
Yeah, yeah.
Fury or Exile, I think one of the two. I think it was Exile.
Exile.
Exile, because Jaina was a witness to it too, and stuff like that. And they're literally the Falcon was you know, had a huge breach in the hull as well, and so they had to send you know, what, Jaina and Ben, and was it Kip with them? Where I think Kip's the one that Ben stabbed through the belly. Not too sure.
I can't remember.
I can't remember, but anyways,
I just remember Katarn on the Jason side.
Yeah,
but he knew, and he was in denial, like, for a lot of it.
He was.
And then Leia wasn't, because Leia's like, we know he could be dangerous. And then Jaina, when she's like, I have to be like the one and stuff, like, I have to, like, I know him, he knows me, he's gonna underestimate me, and I'm gonna go train with the Mandalorian, like that. Like, she basically put her foot down, because she's always kind of like, you know, not disrespected, you know, but they're like, oh, you know, no, Jaina, da 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 da, and she's still kind of growing, like, in her arc too. So. But that's like, she finally like puts a foot down, like, I'm gonna do this, I have to do. And this is after Luke, because Luke's like, well, I can't do it, because Jason had already injured him, and you know, Luke didn't want to go to the dark side or something to be able to defeat Jason, right? That was like,
that's true. Yeah, that's true understanding about Luke's arc, because he's experienced the dark side. He knows how he can be. He's like the strongest Jedi of all time right now in this time frame. Probably the most strongest Force user so far in the timeline. And so this is where he has a lot of self-awareness. This is what you call a Grand Master, where they understand their limitations.
Exactly. Yep. Kind of like the Jedi in Revenge of the Sith knew to send Obi-Wan based off of his fighting style. And that's like really elaborated on in the Revenge of the Sith novel that Matt Stover sat with George Lucas on and brought up when he was writing, and also brought Lucino's notes about because George doesn't care about the EU or any of that, but you know, he brought notes from the other writer on the other book, because they were both doing these EU so
and then what's so interesting about Han Solo, about like him finding out and stuff, when he started coming to terms, which made Leia tear up a couple of times, is he's all, that's not Jason, my son wouldn't do that.
Yeah, that's when he finally
disown, and the fact, you know, disown Jason in a sense.
Well, and he only refers to him as Kitus after that, right? He won't refer to him as Jason anymore.
Yeah, and that was him. Yeah, that was him trying to disassociate himself from Jason, from his son, and from what he has been doing. And to just imagine as a parent having to go through something like that. Like, imagine you raised your kid, and he was such a sweetheart. He loved animals. He was caring. He was always caring for animals, bringing them in his own little room, and you know, what have you, joking, making some corny jokes and stuff, and you know, and stuff, and having such a light heart, you know, and stuff like that, turning so malicious.
Oh, and that's a great point. So, and I think a lot of those come from Young Jedi Knights, right? Because I haven't read that, but it's funny that you mentioned that, because throughout the book, right, they do quotes between them, like back in that series, and they really put some in that last book, and that's when you kind of know, like, oh, Jason's gonna die. Like, right, you kind of already figure that out, even though you kind of know, because it's a story arc.
It tugs at the heart. I mean, so like Troy didn't, you know, it felt like the ending of Jason, basically, or Cadus, was rushed in a sense. He could have done a little bit better on that. When you read the book and you get those remembrance scene of like Jaina remembering her brother.
Yep.
Like almost every chapter, I believe. Like,
and that's why Troy probably is one of my favorite, because even though maybe his books aren't, I mean, I can't say they're not flashy star by star, but like, you know, they're not your Darth Plagueis and Darth Bane, or just whatever. Like, they're not flashy, but they're emotionally invoking, right? Like, that's what he's really good at doing that. And I've heard like the X-Wing series is like that too. That's why I need to go back and review it. I know Rhino, I think, started reading it. But I remember hearing, I think a month ago or something, it was like Ryan and Meg talking to Matt Wilkins. They were talking about it. And I'm like, man, I got to get into that, because that sounds like it's pretty good stuff. So I
Mhm.
definitely got to go
Yeah.
back and do that. But that's why I
What-
want to read Young Jedi Knights, because I feel like revisiting and then going back through the arc with that added material will probably make it even better. I can only imagine.
Oh yeah, they were so like Lucasfilm at the time was so phenomenal about the continuity and referencing history and historical events pertaining to those characters. When they were younger versus older and what have you, and stuff like that. So with that being said, one more question within the book thing. Do you have a favorite single book? This is like one of the hardest for people to answer. Do you have a favorite single book? Like out of all the books you read, so this is the books you read. Do you have a favorite?
I would say Plagueis, and I would say that because even if you're not even a Star Wars fan, I feel you can read the Darth Plagueis book and love it.
Yeah.
Even if you
Okay.
don't know anything about Star Wars, I think it's so like technical, and obviously you're getting a crash course on all of Star Wars up to that point, because James Luceno like really crams in freaking all kinds of lore, going throughout everything, like from the ancient Sith to the Banite Sith to, and he brings up some Sith lords during the Rule of Two era that are like in the 500 BBY range and all that stuff. You learn about the Sith Grand Plan and basically the plot points for the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. Especially if you say you watched all the Star Wars movies, but you're a normie, and especially if you just watched the PT and then you read the Plagueis book, like I think it's like a massive like tie-in, and like so that's what I would.
It's a prequel to it too, so it's one of the prequel books to it.
And there's some things, obviously the Dathomirian crap that they put in there, but that's 4 pages. I think I went back and I looked when I was reviewing it with Rhino, I think, and it's like 4 or 5 pages, and you could tell it was just like thrown in there just to do it.
Yeah, it's like Luceno just skirted over. It was kind of dry, like it wasn't important.
You even get the linkage of the scimitar. You get the linkage of the scimitar because Plagueis is it was a Rugus gnome design and the cloaking device on it, and that goes all the way to the Heir to the Empire trilogy, because Thrawn really isn't looking for, he's looking for the cloaking device. He's not looking for clones or Sabayoth or any of that. He's looking for the cloaking device, which is the cloaking device used on the scimitar from Rugus gnome. So yeah, it's just great. So I always say, Plagueis single book, Darth Bane trilogy, and then like Legacy and NJO, like they're like right next to each other. Like that's the way I look at it.
Awesome. So do you have a favorite? So this is going to get more into the universe, not character wise just yet, but do you have a favorite planet?
I would probably say Naboo, because I think the care and the detail that was put into the Phantom Menace, like you get the whole Gungan experience. Like you do the one time you go in there and you're never going to see it again. And everything they put into creating the world, and that's just the Gungan part of Naboo. Then you get into Theed and all the architecture and all that stuff, and just the planet as a whole, and they have different types. It's not just like, oh look, this is a marshland, or oh this is a jungle, or this is you have all different kinds of terrain all through Naboo. You got Anakin and Padme rolling around in the grass. You got the misty jungles that are close to the lakes and oceans, and then you have the Gungan world that's just freaking under water and all that, and then you have all the cool starship. Like Naboo's just awesome. I think it's really cool. And then obviously Korriban, because I'm a freaking big Sith fan. Korriban would probably be up there too. But like Naboo obviously is a nicer planet you'd want to be on. Korriban's like spirits and tombs and shit like that. But the history buff in me likes that.
Archaeologist, Korriban would probably be really be a place where you want to visit.
Yeah, and then obviously Zeltros too. Like lots of people like Soul Assassin would want to go there too.
For reasons. The party planet.
Yep. Or Nar Shaddaa, right?
Right, Nar Shaddaa. So, do you have a favorite species?
Favorite species? Probably like the Sith purebloods.
Okay.
I think they're cool. I think Munes are freaking cool, dude. Like, I don't know, man. There's so many cool species, but I would say, I guess if I had to pick one, like Sith purebloods, probably.
Okay, and why do you think? Why do you like them?
It's just they're the ancient society of the freaking part of Star Wars I probably love the most, you know,
Yeah.
and just like, I don't know, I think they're cool. Their
And the birth
character
of the Sith
design.
Order, basically, because you know they're the ones that like when the Dark Jedi exiles got to Korriban and all that stuff, they're the ones that they seen as gods or something like that. Remember, and they held them in high regards and stuff. And
Yeah.
over time, they married, like they interbred and stuff like that. To now, the Sith basically are gone through extinction because of that.
Yeah, and like Source of Sin was the one that I guess in the book they're saying figured out that they can crossbreed and all that, and then she used alchemy and stuff to create the Masasi, which is basically like buffed out Sith pure breed warriors, and then you had like the Leviathans and all that other stuff. But yeah, like, and it's just cool. Like, it's always cool when you see like a Sith pure breed, especially like in like the SWTOR cinematics, like on the first one where you have Vindican getting killed by Malgus at the end of that cinematic, like he's a pure breed, and like Scourge in the Revan book, like just the way they describe him and everything. It's just cool. They're cool.
Yeah. All right. And let's see. I know you do you have a favorite vehicle from Star Wars? It doesn't have to be a starfighter or whatever, but do you have a favorite vehicle? Like there's a whole plethora of vehicles you could choose from now.
I would say, like, I didn't just thinking off the top of my head, ship. Okay. That freaking thing reminds me of Flight of the Navigator. If anyone's
really,
and you've seen Flight of the Navigator, right? Because it takes you around and it like has a mind of its own type shit, right?
Yeah.
Like if I remember that movie correctly, like I watched it a bunch of times growing up, but I don't remember all the details of it. But it kind of gave me Flight of the Navigator vibes the first time I witnessed that ship. But I mean, I guess if I wanted, I would probably want, I guess, the Millennium Falcon, right? Like, who wouldn't want it? And that's the one James Luceno book that I have not read is the Millennium Falcon.
Oh, that one, huh? That's very interesting. So if you're really interested in the Millennium Falcon, I would highly recommend that because it gives us a whole history of when it was created, how it became Han Solo's ship, like in all of, I mean, so yeah, so it's very interesting if you like the Falcon, you want to learn history from it and all of that. So it has quite a bit of
Eben Hawk. Yeah, dude, the what was it? Is it the Outlander? What's the one from Shadows of the Empire? There's so many cool
Outlander?
ships, right? Yeah, there's so many cool
What
ships.
about, okay, so we always think about the ship that's normal to the galaxy, but what do you think about the Vong ships?
Yeah, those are freaking cool too. I don't know if I'd want to be in one though, but
you have to wear was it called the Uglith cloaker or the helmet where it conforms around your face so that you can bond with the ship and control it?
Yeah, that's crazy. That's almost kind of like Aliens vibes, right?
Yeah. Kinda. Like when in New Jedi Order when they go to when Luke, Tahiri, Mara, and I think it was just those three go down into Coruscant after, you know, the Vong already took over and stuff. And they're disguised as Vong, you know, like Mara's like, I'll use the, you know, the crab armor, basically, you know, like I'm using Mandalorian talk here. And Luke's like, I don't want to do that. I don't want this living thing thriving on my body kind of thing. So he wore a fake suit, a fake armor, Vong armor. And Mara's like, let me have the real stuff. So just imagine that, like having your, like even your armor, you know, be a biological species.
Yeah, it's kind of like Battlestar Galactica, right? Like I don't remember the old one, but the newer one, like when Katie Sackhoff's like stranded or whatever, Starbuck, right? She has to do that, right? She flies the biological, it's because it's kind of like biological, right? Mechanical, biological of the Cylon to get back to the ship. Like, so that'd be like something similar, like on screen, I guess.
Yeah, and I think isn't that all around the same time all that stuff started coming out with this biological kind of like ships?
I think so, because I think that show was like mid 2000s or way late 90s. No, I think it's early 2000s. I can't remember. I actually didn't really watch it when it was on TV. I binged it like a couple years ago. You know, when Disney Star Wars started going, you know, destroying the EU and shit, I really got hard back into the EU, like, you know, and not just stuff I had read before, but like trying to venture onto other stuff. And then, you know, I started watching other shows and sci-fi stuff and all, because I did actually give Disney Star Wars a chance, you know, not just on the big screen, but I read, they were smart at hooking people in with you know, using EU authors in the beginning, you know. So I'm like, oh,
yeah.
it's the James Luceno book, this is by John Jackson Miller. Paul Kemp's an underrated one too, but he doesn't have like a whole lot of material. But I love like Deceived. I think it's like super underrated. They actually had to tone it down and take some stuff out because he had the Sith kicking around the Jedi, decapitated Jedi heads or something like that. And they're like, whoa, buddy, that's a little too much. So they had him pull that out.
It would have been perfectly fine if it was regular Lucasfilm.
Yeah. So, but then you started getting your Claudia Grays and your this and your that. And again, like then they announced decanonization. And, you know, I had heard some stuff. We were kind of talking about it on Twitter, right? I mean, you were messaging about, because I haven't like Zahn was excited, like the canon. Like he was, you know, Tim's played clips of that too. But
yeah, when he goes and says like beforehand, he's in this interview at, I think it's a Star Wars convention, saying there will never be a reboot. I recommend it, blah, blah, blah. And now he's like all for it. So yeah, so there you go.
But Luceno, I remember hearing like you'd sent me a clip on an interview, and I don't know if it's the same one or if he just did all these different interviews. But I remember when it was like they were talking about I had listened to some other ones too, and it was about NJO and all that stuff. But then he talked about like and he goes, well, I don't really see it as like a different like I'm gonna write my books as the Star Wars universe. Like I'm not going to be like, oh, those books I wrote before aren't the Star Wars universe or something like that. And I distinctly remember that. So I got to go back. I got to start finding all those audio clips and saving them because you never know. But yeah, so I mean, I haven't heard his full on, you know, but I mean, again, he's written multiple Disney books. So, well, I mean, they don't use him anymore, but they used him for Catalyst, which is the Rogue One prequel. And then they used him for that Tarkin book.
Yeah, Tarkin he made gay. And so I think that was a choice of the story book. The story.
Yeah, the new story group.
Yeah, story group, I was going to say. But yeah, so because he did like, he, in that interview, he talks more about it. And that he says that he had like most of the scripts written out, or not scripts, but, you know, the outline written out and stuff like that. And basically, he alluded to having to, you know, put in what they wanted him to do and stuff, which is normal because that's what Lucasfilm has done before, because he met with George Lucas before too, like, or at least he was able to get notes from him and stuff like that. So, you know, whatever the creator says, the main person says has to go, and you have to write that.
No, continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, I was gonna say you have to write that into, you know, because that's their story. You have the privilege of writing, but you still have to write according to them.
Yeah, and that's like the Plagueis stuff with the Dathomirians, because, you know, TCW, blah, blah, blah. It's the same thing with the controversial Revan book, right? I mean, Drew Karpyshyn wrote that book because they were planning the SOTOR, and they probably had already planned out, hey, we're going to, you know, also this expansion pack and, you know, reintroduction of Revan. So they had him do the stasis thing and all that stuff. Like, I'm assuming that's why they did it. Like, I'm pretty sure I have to go back and research that, but I know Fractured Filter can't stand that. I think I'm going to set up a debate with EU fans and have a pro Revan book and anti Revan book and do like a friendly 3-on-3.
Well, yeah,
I think that'd be fun.
I'm
like
pro Revan book. Battle. Yeah, I'm pro Revan book because I never really played the game.
Yeah, and I think that's the way it is. I don't really mind it. I just don't think it's like some of Karpyshyn's best work. Like, I think the Bane stuff's like miles above it. But there's lots of cool stuff like Scourge, like just the ending though. And I think people get upset because of Mitra Surik and, you know, how she gets killed and all that shit. But I don't really mind it because I don't think Mitra Surik, like, you know, I'm not a huge Mitra Surik fan. The reason I like KOTOR 2 is because of the Sith lore, and I think Darth Nihilus was wasted. I think he should have been the last boss, and, you know, and I haven't played the version where they had like a lot of the stuff they didn't finish on it that they finished like after the fact or whatever. So I do need to go back and hit that up for sure. But
out of the whole Star Wars history and stuff, what story stood out for you? Like, what really stood out for you? That can include the movies as well, like anything within the stories, the historical timeline of Star Wars.
Like the history of like behind the scenes, or the history of like the
Not
Star Wars
behind the
universe?
scenes, just the story, like just story in general. Like, like we have the stories that are in the Old Republic, we have the stories. And so what stood out for you like significantly in Star Wars, like the story wise?
I would guess I would probably say the original trilogy. I mean, it's the hero's journey and the, the turn of Darth Vader, Darth Vader, the reveal of him being the father. And then obviously him being able to turn him, he did everything that Obi-Wan and Yoda told him not to do. He went to his friends, but he didn't care. They told him to kill Vader. He didn't do it, like, so, but he learned their lessons. Like, a Jedi is only to use defense and not, so like he was using Yoda's lessons. He just wasn't using Yoda's words at the end,
Yeah.
And there's just lots of stuff like, luminous beings. Like, there's just so much cool shit in the, and I am a massive, like, you'll hear me talking about the prequel trilogy a lot more than the original trilogy. But I mean, I know, what began it all. And I know the great storytelling of the OT. So I just think that's like really impactful. I think the Revan story and KOTOR is fantastic too. I know people that actually say they like it better than the movies, because that was like a massive thing. Like, you didn't know, like, now hindsight, people are like, oh, it's so obvious. Like, yeah, right. But when you were playing the game, you had no freaking clue, really. Like, you'd start to piece it together, but a lot of people didn't, so.
Yeah. Okay. So we're coming up to your second quiz. We had two today.
All right.
Who called Bane the Sith Ari?
Oh shit. Hold on.
Or refer to him as a Sith Ari?
Oh, Darth Tenebris.
No.
Darth Plagueis?
So it's Kopek.
Oh, is it Kopek? I was thinking Cordis, but wow,
yeah,
that's a good one, man. You got those are some good questions.
Like I said, I like to just like to get in there and like find these little tiny bits and pieces and then say, okay. So that's why when I say I prep, that's what I prep for, is for the quiz part.
Gotcha.
Other than that, I have all the basic questions down.
Kopek and Cordis, that's a great dynamic too, right? Because one of them finds Bane, he's like, this is my prize student, but then he sends him to the headmaster that doesn't like him on Korriban to train him and shit. So it's like there's a good dichotomy there between them as well,
Man,
and
he struggled with that too, man, and he was getting his ass whooped for a while.
Yeah, you know what I love too? That one scene where he's on the roof slicing raindrops with his freaking lightsaber or something. That shit was really cool too.
Yeah, just imagine that, it's maybe steam because it's supposed to be hot coming up when you're doing that or something. I don't know. That's focus right there.
Right.
Straight on focus. So right here. Let's see here. Soul Assassin.
That's great.
Prep. That's what it's called when you are evading Darth Toby's attacks. He's a good cat. But he's still sleeping. He usually tries to lay up here next to me when I'm streaming. So, okay. So what is your least favorite story in Star Wars?
Okay. So I hate Dawn of the Jedi, and I don't like, I guess you could say the comics are better, but they're not that good either. Like, but I hate Dawn of the Jedi. Unpopular take, I don't like Shatterpoint.
Really?
I feel it's not like a Mace Windu story, not a Mace Windu story I wanted to see. Like, I would have wanted to see him like kicking ass and using his saber, and like, I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like the antagonist and just the whole story, I don't feel that it fits with me. I don't know. It's me. Maybe I need to reread it or something. I just don't. And then Fatal Alliance. I love the Old Republic, but I can't, excuse my language, I can't stand that freaking book. And really, like, the first like third of it, I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool because they set up this dynamic, right? Where you have a Sith, a Jedi, a Mandalorian, and somebody else, whatever, droid, I can't remember. And they're all trying to get this artifact, right? Or something that's like on Nar Shaddaa. Like, I can't even remember now, like, the specifics, because I've never gone back to reread it. And then it just gets into like, I think it does some techno beast stuff and all this, but it just like goes into like left. To me, it just falls off a cliff. Like, I don't remember any of the Sith's name or anything involved in it. Oh, and I think it's the one cool thing was there was a Mandalorian and he was Transdoshan, I think, right? Or something.
Yeah.
I think he was Transdoshan. But yeah, I didn't like that book at all. So those are probably my 3 most unlike. Well, I guess there's worse books than Shatterpoint, but I think Shatterpoint is probably the most disappointing book. I know a lot of people don't like the Cestus Deception. I think that book's kind of cool, dude. It's got some cool stuff in it. It's got light whips, and but it's got like some political aspects going on. It's got some Asajj Ventress, you know.
Mhm.
So it's obviously it's not like one of the best books, but I think that one kind of gets
Yeah.
I think it gets like talked down about sometimes, but I like it.
Yeah, we always talk about, and this is what people like who misconceive us big EU elitist fans, that we are like saying that nothing, like we liked everything in it and there was no continuity errors or anything like that, which is not the truth. We do talk a lot about what we love. Normally that's there, but we also do engage in talking about what we don't care for. And sometimes what I don't care for will be something that you liked because maybe you've seen it a different way or whatever, you know. So that's why I ask these countering type questions, I guess you can say, because it's always good to discuss points and stuff that maybe you didn't really care for as well, because we can discuss the faults that happened in that era or that timeline. It can also make us look at it in a different perspective as well. So with that being said, what do you think of TCW's version of Darth Bane, that vision that Yoda had, and that he's wearing that armor?
let me go back real quick to what you were just talking about. So I always tell the EU haters, or that you think I always tell people, because you also get the crowd, the EU sucked. Okay, name 5 books of the EU that sucked. I guarantee you they can't even name them because they probably haven't read the EU at all. And then where I know anybody that I know that's read the EU, I know plenty of people that don't like a lot of EU books. So, and then I'd always ask, well, what didn't you like about it, to make sure they actually read the book, you know? But yeah, so I mean, I think that's like a bullshit. And especially of the EU traders that do the gotcha stuff, and they take out of context things like the light whip being like Vernestra Rose light whip. Okay, well, there wasn't a light whip that became a lightsaber and then turned back into a light whip. Like,
like
Githany
doesn't go limp and then gets hard again. That's that's a big serious problem for you. I'm sorry, I'm going there.
I mean, people, if they own DVD players, then they probably know fucking a little bit more on how to tactfully talk about that stuff. But you know, some people can't afford.
And you know, Headland was like talking, oh, the saber's a phallic, you know. So she gets into all the strange like sexual connotations of, and you know, and projecting herself and her beliefs into Star Wars like that, you know. So when you get the light whip and you go from hard to limp.
Oh, and the language used when she's like holding the lightsaber, like I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was like laughing, and I made a point not to really show those scenes in my video, but I did bring them up, and I was like laughing, like, how does it feel in your hands? It's been a long time since you've held one. Like, just some of this, it's like, oh my god, dude, as this dude's like butt naked skinny dipping, like, but Star Wars is for kids, you know. But hey, but you're a kid. You're a kid, you should like Andor because it's for sophisticated adults. But hey, this is like Andor with lightsabers. Okay, well, which one is it? Like, dude, make your minds up. So yeah. Okay, so your other question. Oh wait, what did Soul Assassin say? Because he said something else up here.
I don't know. He said all kinds of things. So
he talked about Dawn of the Jedi getting rushed. Okay, I just realized this too recently. I think it was like a few weeks ago or something. I was looking up some stuff. The Bane trilogy, it was supposed to just be Path of Destruction, and then I believe the next slotted book, at least for the Sith, was supposed to be Plagueis, and was supposed to come out in 2008, and then they delayed it to 2009, and then because everybody liked Path of Destruction so much, they asked Drew Karpyshyn to write Rule of Two, and I think he did it in like, I want to say like 5 months or 8 months. Like, I can't remember the time now. Yeah, so they fast tracked that, they quote unquote canceled the Plagueis book, and then obviously it would come back later on and they do it. But yeah, it's because I think that there's like a 11-month gap or something between Rule of Two and Path of Destruction. Oh wait,
Yeah.
no, I think it's a little over a year. But then like Dynasty of Evil, they waited like a couple years or something. So yeah, that's just like a cool thing that I just recently learned when I was
Yeah.
looking up some stuff.
Yeah. It's very interesting because I know at one point they had a schedule of how many books they wanted to have come out per year.
Yeah. Yeah. And they were pumping out like stuff pretty quickly, man. They were really on a roll before the Disney
Yeah, they
buyout.
were.
That's what sucks.
Yeah, they were.
That's what
So-
sucks. But back to your question. So TCW Darth Bane is pathetic. It's I can't believe like, and I'm like, is that like, but it's not like samurai or whatever armor, right? Like, I don't even know what armor that's supposed to be. Like,
let me pull this up. Let me find
it
a
just
picture.
looks stupid, man. Like, put him Orbalisk armor on him or something. Like, or even if you want to do your variation of it, whatever. Like,
well, here's some interesting facts. They were gonna have Darth Bane earlier than season 6, and they were gonna have his Orbalisk armor on him.
Really? And they were gonna do it the same thing where he goes to Korriban, even though they call it Moribond, right? But it's Korriban.
I don't know exactly that, but probably. So let me see. I'll share.
I heard they were talking about putting Revan in it too.
Yes,
like
Revan
is supposed to be in arc.
Revan and him were supposed to be in it. He was supposed to have his Orbalisk on, and they canceled that out. Then season 6 came along, which I still believe, even though that season 6 had like some scripts and stuff already ready to go, it was canceled, but they had to finish it during Disney's after the buyout. So, and then like I remember Ryan and a few of them reported like how they changed scenes for that season. And they moved the story around, or they did something with the story. So I kind of think that this might have been changed too under Filoni. I'm just only speculating. I want to research it more because like season 6 talks about the chip. Well, when you look at the concept art, it's not called the chip. It's not called that. It's not referred to that. It's talked about as a tumor.
Yeah. You're talking about like with the clones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'll give Karen Travis, you could like her writing, don't like her writing. I think she's pretty based, right? Because I have a feeling that's what she did, right? They made her write that novelization of the Clone Wars movie. And that was George's thing. And then I don't think it retcons too much yet of anything, and then she wanted to finish her Clone Commando stuff, right? And her Republic Commando stuff, because then she left for creative differences. They basically wanted to retcon her own shit, basically. Like, hey, we know you did all this work on the clones and Mandalorian history and language and this, that, but hey, we're going to retcon all that. Can you write the books for us? And she was like, fuck you. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And I don't blame her. I think she's pretty, give her some credit for being virtuous when it comes to that. I've always wondered about Drew Karpyshyn because he never wrote anything for Disney, but I know he said originally he wanted to do a Zana book or trilogy, because I remember there was a fan petition. I know I signed it for a Zana trilogy. And that was back in the times, right, where people were hoping they would do like 2 continuities or whatever and continue the EU. While they were doing their Disney crap or whatever. But I've always wondered, like, I wonder if they call Drew Karpyshyn tomorrow, if he'd even go work for Disney, or if he'd be like, and why didn't they hit him up? Because they hit like all these other authors up, but not him. And he has some really like known material, so recently known. So yeah, I don't know. I've always kind of wondered that.
Yeah. And so let's go ahead and listen to this real quick. Let's see here, since we're on the topic. Let me see. Do I have it? Yeah. Make sure I have this here. All right. There we go. So everybody's favorite man in the cowboy hat.
That I know fans would have found very interesting was that George was looking for 2 ancient Sith Lords that could, bring some meaning that would be kind of like an uber evil influence guiding the son. And this was Darth Bane and Darth Revan. Both of who existed in the EU. So it was going to be a big deal to bring these kind of legendary Sith Lords into Clone Wars, and thus, into the world of the George Lucas Star Wars story. We designed them. They are in the Clone Wars style. We modeled them in the Clone Wars style. And we shot the scene in the episode. The scene exists. But it never made it into animation. It only existed in layout. I was very apprehensive of this scene, as cool as it was, because of the implication of it. That I know fans would have found very interesting was that I was looking for two.
Yeah, so there you go. So, but from what I've researched, George didn't want it in there. So I don't know. So we know how he likes to lie and stuff like that. So I want to look further into that because I hear George didn't want it in there.
Yeah, see, I was researching the campfire stuff because I thought it was him that said it. It was actually Sam Witwer that said that he said, you know, they're like campfires, because I was trying to, it's really hard to find stuff on, like the one with the that's rude and all that. I finally had his Twitter message Rhino and be like, hey, can you send me that? Because literally when I try to look it up, I'll even say like parts of the sentence. I can't find it on YouTube or Google when I try to look it up. It's like they have it buried, so you can't like, or I just really suck at searching for things. But so I finally got that clip from him because I want to add some of that stuff too. But I want to find the one where he talks about how he snuck shit in behind George's back, because I had that clip and I don't know what I did with it. But yeah, so I mean, he's on record of saying that, like, oh, if I waited until this, I could get it through, you know, without him being able to change it or whatever. So that's like, to even say that tells you the kind of person you're dealing with, you know?
Exactly. And, you know, so, you know, like there's a lot of questions within that stuff. And so that's why I don't take anything seriously. And that it's not legit. I guess you could say it's not reliable on top of that. So, yeah, but with that, with Darth, Bane, and Revan, and considering them to be in TCW to influence the sun, and Soul Assassin had a good point too as well. And you know, like Revan went back to the light and Bane was this destroyed spirit and body. So, you know, if you're gonna, you know, use certain characters for that, then you really need to honor that. And we know Filoni doesn't honor. We know that. We know that for a fact.
Yeah, and the Bane in the book in Dynasty of Evil, he talks about Ndedu's holocron and how, you know, you'll go into like the nether. It's basically, it's described as the chaos, right? Like in the book of Sith, that's what they call it. But yeah, in the book of Dynasty of Evil, he talks about, yeah, if you're unsuccessful and they fend you off, like you're basically in eternal hell, basically like nowhere. Yeah. Kind of like what happens to Tenebris.
Yeah. But how would, okay, so mind you, these Mortis ones, the ones, whatever you want to call them, they're just embodiment of what the Force is. So we have like the embodiment of the dark, the embodiment of the light. The Father, I don't really call him balance, but he's, you know, he's there to, because there's no such thing as balance, someone in between, right?
Well, that's why I don't understand how George, like, because everybody's like, oh, George, the Mortis arc was really like George, but that's not even George's definition of balance, and it never really has been. So I don't understand. That sounds like a Filoni thing, not a George Lucas thing. So I've never really understood that. I'm thinking
with the retconning that was happening in Fate of the Jedi for the Mortis arc, because we have Abeloth. She's the bringer of chaos, right? So with that, then you would think the Father is the bringer of peace. That's not balance, really.
Nope.
You know, because the light side is balance, but then, you know, you have to look at the two opposites, polar opposites. We have the light and the dark. We have the chaos, and then we have peace. That's how I see that. If you want to make sense in this, that's the easiest way to do that, right? So my point is like, okay, so if these guys are embodiments of these elements, or these energetic elements of the Force, they're not really Celestials, because Celestials did create these guys too. Then why would he be looking up to these ancient Sith? Wouldn't they be looking up to him?
Right.
Because he's a lot older than these guys.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So this is where I think like they said, oh, wouldn't make sense, it wouldn't fit. It's not because that for Filoni, I'm trying to think in Filoni's logic. It's not because these guys wouldn't fit in there, because they'll use them in which way, because that's been proven. It is that what I just stated, that these Mortis people are a lot older than these Sith people. That's how I see that. So So that's how I see that. So I've been in the chat. If you agree, that's cool. If not, that's fine as well. That's me trying to make sense of that. Yeah. And then Soul has when he said it's possible that the Celestials are ones started the Jedi to keep Abeloth in check. Interesting. Well, they're responsible for the galaxy, the Celestial, not the ones, but the Celestials. So.
Yeah, and as much as I don't like, Dawn of the Jedi and all that, I would have loved to see more of like the Rakatan Empire and like and a lot of that stuff, or other parts of that Dawn of the Jedi era, where the protagonists and antagonists actually like you could remember and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
but yeah, so.
Okay, so we're going to come to the last question. Maybe this is one of the last ones here, so we're going to start winding down. What do you think of the rule of 2?
I think the rule of 2. Oh, Soul Assassin. I think my son has his TV blasting, and you can hear Land Before Time in the background.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
Is that what it is? Is it loud?
Yes.
Oh man,
it was. You're fine. You're kind of okay now.
Okay, maybe when I talk, then you can't hear it. So I think the rule of 2, although flawed, is the best. Is the best form and setup for the Sith. As much as I love, the Sith Empire, and I love seeing all kinds of Sith on screen, attacking Jedi and all that. The rule of 2 worked, and contrary to popular belief, Darth Sidious controlled most of the known galaxy and more of the known galaxy than any other Sith before, after, or anything. So it obviously was the correct philosophy to get them there. Now I realize people bastardized it here and there, and they all had their own. But remember, like Plagueis basically was ready to end the rule of 2 and said that they weren't going to need it and all that. And because of his arrogance to that, that's why Palpatine actually was able to. He's like, you're in your arrogance. You think that the ways of Darth Bane. And it's funny in the Book of Sith, Sidious refers to himself as the Sithari, but really Bane really is the true Sithari, because he tore down the old structure of the Sith and created them back up. And so he is the prophesized one that did that, but it was Palpatine who reaped the benefits of being the Sithari,
Yeah, exactly. After he was the one that, was able to enact the revenge of the Sith and stuff and all that, so. All right. So we're going to start winding down now. It was a pleasure to have you here interviewing you about what we love, Star Wars, and
I appreciate being here.
Geeky, nerdy talk together with the chat. Everybody here, you guys are all amazing as well for hanging out with us and enjoying this time. So Justin, Star Wars Marvel Purist, do you have anything else you want to add to what we've talked about? Anything else before we start coming to a conclusion?
I just had a great time. I could talk about Star Wars or Marvel for 24 hours on end. I love talking about this stuff. And I didn't know where our conversation would head, but it just like went, I don't know if people expect it, because you don't hear me talk about Jedi Academy that much or New Jedi Order. But I love those stories. I'm really focused on the Sith as of right now, because they're getting destroyed by Disney's. As is all Star Wars lore, but like especially the Sith as of late, and we kind of knew it was coming. And they have books called Secrets of the Sith, where like more than 2/3 of the cover aren't even real Sith on the cover, so weird stuff like that. But yeah, I just love my whole thing is preserving the George Lucas and Stan Lee legacies, because these two people really like put a lot into these universes that everybody loves. And George is a human; he isn't perfect, but he did the most perfect thing with a franchise you can do. There's people that criticize his choices and all that, but he revolutionized like different kind of industries, people that say he's a sellout for toys and all that. I encourage them all to take down their shops and stuff on their YouTube channels, right? Because that whole idea is like part of what George did. The licensing of toys, they're like, whatever, okay, so yeah. The story of Star Wars is great. The expanded universe is just like, it's a masterpiece. Like, again, there's parts of it that are flawed or wrong, or, there's even some books that don't even really feel that Star Wars, but most of it was done in the intention of doing Star Wars and the love of Star Wars and making, adding on to the story, but also having respect for the story, the creator, the fans, everybody as a whole. So like, yeah, I mean, I just encourage everybody, even if you've read the EU or parts of the EU, like I constantly go back and reread. And if you get a couple bad stories that you don't like or something like that, you know, go to a palate cleanse, you know, like we just, you know,
Yeah.
anyone who watched YouTube videos about the Acolyte, you know, go read the Darth Plagueis book or something like
Right.
that. Or, you know, I'll hit a couple stories that I don't like or something, and I'll go read something that I do just to keep myself going on it and stuff. Like, you know, play the video game. Now they have all these modded games where they're like updated and stuff like that. I know eventually I'll probably start doing some Star Wars streams if I ever get a chance, like to, you know, doing some gameplay and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, just have fun with it. There's so much fun, awesome stuff with Star Wars. And, you know, like you always say, like with the quizzes, you're like, you know, we can't remember it all. You can't. Like by the time you get to all the other stuff that you forgot about or don't know as much about, then you start forgetting details of the other stuff that you loved before that. And then you got to go back and revisit that. So you could definitely stay busy with it.
Yep, exactly. And it's all about fun, having fun, nerding out together and stuff like that. And my pleasure. I'm so glad to have another Talking EU interview up. My goal with this is no matter how consistent or inconsistent these interviews are going to be, I want to be able to interview, you know, a multitude of people about their love of Star Wars, you know, about George Lucas era. We're not talking about Disney's Star Wars. We're not talking about the faux stuff. And just to show that, you know, we have similar likes, and then sometimes we may not agree on similar stories and stuff. And we can come into those debates. We could talk about it civilly. We can have fun, because even with something we may not agree on in the Star Wars lore, there might be something within there that we do agree on, or at least we could laugh at and say, yeah, that was kind of funny, you know, kind of deal. And that's what this is all about. So thank you again. I appreciate you coming on, making the time here. I know how it is to have, you know, a young family and stuff like that, and all the responsibilities and stuff, and also your own growing channel. Nerds. And that's what the mod is here for, because he's a big nerd as well. Thank you, Soul Assassin, and everybody else that came in. And I think I had someone that popped in that hasn't been here for a while. Who was it? Sorry if I can't remember right now.
Yeah, and thanks again for having me on, and thanks again for, like, I know you help, like, because with Twitter, like, I never really wanted to get into the cesspool known as Twitter, so I don't like have a big following. I basically created my Twitter to go with my channel and all that, so
That's what my Twitter's about.
I appreciate you getting my stuff out there and stuff and helping. And I'm working really hard, you know, like I actually am going to have to dial back a little bit because we're selling our house and all that. But I mean, I'm always going to stay somewhat consistent. You know, not somewhat. I think I'm very consistent. Like I'll have like a wave where I do extra live streams or extra videos, and then you'll kind of see me kind of dissipate. Right now with the Wokalite, like I don't even know if I'm going to do the last review. Like I already have most of the audio done, but it's like I don't even know if I want to, like, it's like taking that much out of me. It's just but I want to get into like doing the comics and different stuff that I've been doing, because I'm like learning some stuff as I'm going through this stuff with everybody else. But yeah, I appreciate you and Tim and everybody helping kind of get my stuff out there. I know I'm kind of late to the party. I wish I would have jumped in, you know, years back, but you know, it's hard to balance that in real life and stuff, but I'm having a lot of fun doing it. So
yeah, with this, thank you, Ancient One, too. Like I said, this is someone that I haven't seen around in a while, so thank you again. But do you have anything coming up within this next week or so on your channel?
Well, like I said, I'm deciding whether I'm gonna, you know, I know like a lot of my regulars will probably check out my Wokalite review. I try to make them funny. I kind of like do what Melvin does, but I do like mine are very long because I really try to get into the lore and debunk a lot of the lore stuff. And I gave compliments to certain things like Cortosis, like you know, because there were channels that don't really cover Star Wars that were like making fun of the concept of Cortosis. I'm like, well, the concept of Cortosis as a whole isn't bad. You know what I'm saying? It's the application and how they're doing it. The fact they had it growing on the walls like raw metal, you can just cut off the wall and make a gauntlet out of. Like, that's the stuff I have a problem with. You know, and then just the fact that they're bastardizing the lore, and then the wannabe little mini Baldemnic planet. But I started adding some funny stuff, and I make character names for everybody. Like Kamir was Shang Tsung because he looked like Shang Tsung, like a de-aged one from the movie, you know, and just stuff like that. So I try to have fun with it. But I am going to do, there's like, I've broken it down into about 5 videos I'm going to do. It was on the Book of Sith stuff. It's going to be one on Source of Sin. One is an intro about Book of Sith. One's about Disney and their fans and how they don't, Disney and their fans and how they don't like the Sith. And then I have another one on Sith holocrons. It's a comparison between Disney lore, which they only have 3 holocrons or something like that, versus the 38 or however many it was in the EU lore that I counted. So I'm going back. It's old stuff, but it was right, you know, it was for the Melvin celebration. I didn't have visual stuff, so I'm going back. I'm going to add all that stuff in because I think it's very relevant since we just got a Sith-centered story that wasn't really centered around the Sith. So I'm going to do that, get those out. I'm finishing. I have 2 of my Grievous comic things out. I'm going to be putting that out. The last 2 of those, which are already done on live stream, just got to make videos out of them. And then I have one on a Dark Force Rising. I have the final book on that. And then we're going to get into Last Command. And then we're also going to go way back and go into the Tales of the Jedi stuff. I think I'm going to hit those comics next. Yeah, and that's it. And then me and Rhino got to finish up our pure unadulterated Star Wars on Plagueis. It ended up being a 3-parter because that book's so packed.
It is. It's a dense but amazing read. And yeah, I can't wait for you guys to, you know, come to the conclusion on that and stuff. Been fun listening in on that as well. And thank you again for coming on again. And hope we can collaborate some more. You know, I look forward to
definitely. I plan on doing the Bane trilogy, and I know you wanted to do that, so I'm gonna probably expand out to like 3 or 4 people once I've had multiple people on, and that everybody knows the format. I got to get with Tim because he talked about wanting to do Cloak of Deception. Eventually, I want to cover every EU book in long format like that because I'm like, what's the thing I could do different? Because you know, Matt Wilkins has his rereads and stuff like that, so I'm like, let's try to do something else that's really cool, that's promoting the EU, that's like kind of different. So that's like my love of what I want to do. That's like the flagship of the channel.
Yeah, keep it fresh with awesome. So thank you, or options. So thank you so much again. And people in the chat, those are listening, please hit that like button, catching the replay. Let me know you came in. And thank you guys again. Thank you again, Darth Ghostface, for the gifted memberships as well. I greatly appreciate that. What an awesome interview. I've been always contemplating on like people who I interview to do a part 2. So you never know, I might reach out again for a part 2 because again, Star Wars lore is so expansive. We can cover something totally different, and it could be something, you know, very different from the interview now.
I'm game for sure.
Yes. Calf Chat is coming up Thursday. We are in the Sith lore, and we're getting into the exiles and how the Sith order was created. However, I'm thinking of talking about Sith species first and then get into the Sith exiles.
Oh, that's cool. That'd be good.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about going that route and then get into the Sith exiles, because once we get into the Sith exiles in that story, it's going to get a lot more dense. So I'm thinking about doing that so people can have a history of the Sith as a species, not the Sith as an order, as a, you know, I wouldn't say faith, but as an order, as, you know, and all that with their alchemy and beliefs and stuff like that. So stay tuned for that. Thursday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And like I said, because I have a huge commitment coming up this year, I'm thinking about, you know, doing maybe Star Wars chats as I create, as I paint and stuff like that. So we can at least have some more consistency on the channel. So, you know, and stuff like that. So thank you again for coming on. I appreciate you. Thank you, chat, for coming in and participating, listening in. And I hope you guys all had a good time, and may the force be with you, and have a good night.
That's just a rumor that has kind of crawled up through fandom for years and years and years. I know that Tim met George Lucas. They had a sit-down conversation before the first book was done. I know that as with any of the novels, everything is cleared through Lucasfilm, and 100% for anything as major as a love interest being developed for Luke. That's a decision that George would have given a yes or no on.
Jedi is something that came a little later. When we started building Jedis, we had a lot of Jedis, and we needed more and more Jedis. As we were doing them toward the end, we ended up with a lot of Jedis that looked like people that worked at ILM, you know, with these short little haircuts and looked like they stepped out from behind a computer. And so I was saying we have to get more exotic Jedis. And so we only have so much resources to do these things with, but I do have Twi'leks because we use them quite a bit in other areas in the Senate and as background action. So I have a sort of a wardrobe and a setup of certain kinds of characters. So it was a way of reinventing some of those characters. And I had realized that we had a comic book that has a Twi'lek in it that is a Jedi. There's a whole series actually of her. And I said, well, why don't we put her in this? I mean, she's a comic character, but we'll just fit her in and have her be a background character because that's exotic. That's how the Twi'lek Jedi ended up in the backgrounds of these shots, was to try to use some of the work and effort that the guys in the comic book world had put into things and characters they had created.
Another happy landing.